What is up, everybody? Welcome to Stat Diggers UFC Vegas 46 early look. It's been so long, Weezy. I think the last time we did a show like this was 4 weeks ago. So hopefully we're not too rusty. But Weezy, how have you been? How was your break?
The break was pretty good, man. I mean, I miss MMA, but I had to do a lot of things behind the scenes to kind of try to improve the content for 2022. I didn't quite realize what a huge undertaking it was going to be. But I got to shout out one of our viewers, my guy Lou Betya, at Lou Betya on Twitter. He built me a database to house all of my stats, which I've been keeping in my own database in Excel, which doesn't really have a lot of the functionalities that a more modern, upgradable database has. So I've been spending a lot of my break kind of updating that stuff, helping him figure out what I want out of this. So I got to shout that dude out for helping me out. Other than that, I've been working on some analytics, trying to get a little more analytical with my bets, and just missing MMA, missing talking about it with you guys. And everybody's been saying, man, it feels like years since we've done this. I feel like the Tin Man and the Wizard of Oz. I need like an oil can to go on all the joints here to just kind of try to get loosened up a little bit. Talk about this with you guys. Have a great 2022. Make a bunch of money, but it starts this week. And we got to kind of ease back in slowly, Brady. Looking at this card, it looks like landmine after landmine after landmine after landmine. I'm thinking maybe we might just want to kind of keep our eyes on this one, start slow, kind of get lathered up a little bit here before we start going full blast balls out as the year wears on a little bit more. But we might need to start off a little bit slow. I'm seeing a lot of landmines here. I'm not exactly sure which way I'm going on a lot of these fights, but it looks like they're going to be really exciting fights, and I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of these guys square off. But I'm hoping once we talk it through with each other and the rest of the guys in the chat here on Pub Sports Radio that we can find some spots and make some money on this card, man.
Yeah, I was telling you before the show, we've been off for 4 weeks, and I have literally one bet on this card, and I want to take it very careful on a card like this. I mean, the biggest favorite is Giga Chikadze, right? Which even then, I don't feel comfortable about that. And I was telling you, we can make a case for pretty much every single dog on the card. So we'll talk through it. We'll talk some props as well as always. Do want to shout out the chat. Thank you all for hanging out. Feels really good to be back. We have Luke, first one in the chat. What is up, Luke? We have Jonathan saying finally, and I agree. It's been a long break. Mushroom in the chat. Welcome back, DFS and Uncle Weezy kicking off 2022 UFC year. Can't wait. 6 more sleeps. Let's fucking go. I agree. We got JSJ23 in the chat as well. What year is it? I feel like I fell asleep in the 90s. Yeah, I feel like that as well. Ready for the Giga Kick, as is a lot of people. Eric Betts fights. It finally feels real. Soon the nightmare will be over. Fresh fights will be assaulting our senses again. Let's get a fella shout out to Eric Betts fights. He's going to be the 4th member on the show I do on my channel on Saturday. Best bet with Uncle Weezy and Narco Cops. So shout out to him. And then shout out to Monk, who's going to be on the DraftKings show here on Pub Sports Radio on Wednesday. So we have a great group of guys this year in content. It's going to be a great one. We got Rick in the chat as well. Smooth Cat. Tim. What is up, Tim? Jack Attack in the chat. We have Road Strummer. Thank you all for hanging out. If you all can please smash the like button, that'd be much appreciated. As always, we'll go live every Sunday, 6:15 p.m. Eastern time up until NFL's over. Then we'll push it back an hour. But until then, 6:15 p.m. Eastern time. We got the boss, Jeff Slaughter, in the chat. What is up, Jeff? How you doing? All right. So Weezy, are you ready to break this card down?
Yeah, I think I'm ready, dude. Like I said, it's been so damn long. I got my hair tied back because I couldn't even get my hair and makeup people to get my hair camera ready today on time. That's how behind I am. That's how out of sync I am. So we got to get into this card. We got to talk through it. We got to get our legs underneath us again here in 2022.
Yeah, for sure. You said you need some oil, and maybe this will help you shake off a little bit of rust. Talking some Silvana Gomez-Juarez versus Vanessa Demopoulos. What a fight to kick off 2022, first fight of the year. And we have Juarez, who is 37 years old, 5'3" with a 65-inch reach. Vanessa Demopoulos, she is 33 years old, 5'1" with a 62-inch reach. So Juarez, she's going to be 4 years older. But she is going to have a 2-inch height advantage and also a 3-inch reach advantage. In terms of their last couple fights, we see that Juarez is 3-2 in her last 5 fights. She has some fights outside the UFC against, fighters like Patelio, fighters like Ariana Lipski. So she hasn't fought the worst competition in the world, but she did make her UFC debut against Lupita Godinez, and she got absolutely dominated and submitted in the first round. Vanessa Demopoulos, she is 2-3 in her last 5 fights. She has some interesting fights outside of the UFC. Cora McKenna on the Contender Series was a loss. She submitted Sam Hughes in a fight as well. A loss against Lupita Godinez. And then recently against JJ Aldrich, she did lose a decision. So, yeah, Weezy, this is, I want to say it's probably one of the lowest, if not the lowest level fights on the entire card. And it's going to kick off our card here. First card 2022 at this banger. So what do you think about this fight, Weezy?
Yeah, this is kind of like a great start to the year. Start off slow. It's like if you haven't worked out for like a year, you don't get in there and just like put 3 plates on the bench and just start going full blast. You won't be able to get out of bed in the morning. So let's start with this one here. A couple of lower level women's strawweights here who are fairly new to the UFC. Both have fought some pretty good competition outside of the UFC, like you mentioned, with Silvana Gomez Juarez fighting Patelio and Lipski, and Demopoulos fighting Sam Hughes and Godinez. The common opponent, Lupita Godinez, we saw Demopoulos go 5 rounds with her, and we saw Juarez absolutely get destroyed by her. So a little bit of MMA math in the favor of Vanessa Demopoulos here. She's 4 years younger, but it's going to be Gomez that's better in the measurables with a 2-inch height advantage, a 3-inch reach advantage. Gomez has got 3 more professional fights, but if we look a little bit deeper into those experience numbers, what I like about Vanessa here is that she's got 10 pro fights in 4 years. So she's been very busy. 2.5 fights per year, getting a lot of experience early in her career, while Silvana Gomez is 37 years old already and with only 3 more professional fights, but in 12 years as a pro. So she's only averaging 1 fight a year. She's already getting up there in age. So I see that Vanessa, while they're both fairly old at 33 and 37, and Vanessa's less experienced and smaller, they seem to be at a little bit different points in their career here, because Vanessa still seems to be a little more active and a little younger in her career, having only a 4-year career. She could still be getting better at this point, while we've probably seen the best that we're going to see out of Juarez. Both of these ladies are pretty good finishers for the weight class, Brady. An 80% finish rate for Juarez in her 10 wins, and a 67% finish rate for Demopoulos in her 6 wins. And Demopoulos has never been finished in 4 losses, and Gomez has been finished in 2 of her 3 pro losses. You can't really talk about Vanessa Demopoulos without talking about the fact that she's seriously tough. She's taken a beating in a lot of these fights. She's been put in a lot of bad situations and has been abused by some people. But she always comes out and always sees that decision on the other end when she's not getting the better of a fight. So she's very, very tough, almost impossible to finish. When we look at the striking numbers, we got really a very small sample size for both of these ladies. A fun little stat, though, Brady, is we do have the lady with the worst striking defense in any division in the entire UFC, with Silvana Gomez Juarez with a 15% striking defense. Is not good. But, she got dominated by Godinez in that fight. Vanessa Demopoulos is really good on the ground, but we have to note that she's 0 of 7 on her takedown attempts. But that isn't as big of a deal as you might think it is, because she's kind of like a Paul Craig type grappler, where she'll get the fight to the ground however she wants. Whether if she can't get the takedown, she'll just pull guard, or she'll try to take your back standing. Vanessa, in her 2 UFC fights, has been in control time positions almost 60% of the time. So whether it's for or against, that's where she wants to be. While Juarez, in her only fight, 0% control time for and 81% control time against. So you get the feeling that if this fight does get to the ground, even if Vanessa has to pull guard to get it there, that's where she's going to have a big advantage. And Silvana, she'll probably be the better striker on the feet, but it's not like Vanessa hasn't knocked anybody out in her career either. So low-level women's fight to start. I kind of like Vanessa because I think that she's much better on the ground than Silvana, while Vanessa has held her own against women like Lupita Godinez, against Orozco and Lipski on the feet. So, against Arceo and McKenna and Hughes and Aldrich. she's fought much better strikers than Gomez has. So I'm leaning Demopoulos here, but there's not going to be a bet.
Yeah, for sure. We see that Demopoulos opened up as a plus 110 dog. She's now minus 130. Juarez opened up minus 130, and she's plus 110. I mean, the problem I have with Demopoulos is, like you mentioned, she's like a really good grappler, brown belt in BJJ. The problem is she can't really get it there, and she really doesn't try to a lot, and it's weird. When she does try to, though, like you said, she pulls guard, and this fight, kind of has armbar from guard written all over it. But, Juarez, people are saying in the chat, it says on UFC stats that she actually has a 6-inch reach advantage, by the way. So, yeah, 6-inch reach advantage for Juarez. So I do favor Demopoulos in terms of the grappling, and I do favor Juarez in terms of striking, especially with that 6 inches of reach. But yeah, like you said, Demopoulos is going to find ways to get it down to the mat. She flops to her back a lot. I would not be shocked if there was, a type of armbar from guard situation, but I'm actually going to pick Juarez to win. Just based off the fact that you go back and watch like the last 6-7 fights of Demopoulos, and I haven't seen her complete one takedown. And I think she has a big advantage on the ground, but if she can't get it there, then, I don't want to lay minus 130. So I'm going to pick the dog and Juarez, but you will not see me betting this fight. Even if more money keeps coming into Demopoulos, like I think it will, I'm still not going to, the dog money is not tempting on Juarez. So I'm going to take Juarez as far as a pick, but there will be absolutely no bet. We have the over-unders out, and then a lot of the props out for this show, which is pretty cool. But we have the over-under. It is set at 2.5 rounds. The over 2.5 rounds is minus 205, and then the under 2.5 rounds is plus 165. That kind of tempts me a little bit, because I think that if Demopoulos does get this fight down to the mat, I think a submission is pretty likely. And both are great finishers. Juarez is a really good finisher, finishing the majority of her fights, and same thing with Demopoulos. So Weezy, interested in the minus 130 on Demopoulos, and then also, what are your thoughts on the over-under, the under at plus 165?
So I probably wouldn't touch the over-unders in this fight, simply because I think it's kind of baked into the win condition of both fighters. I think if Vanessa wins this fight, she gets it to the ground and she submits Gomez. And if Gomez wins the fight, unless she brings a shovel in there, she's not knocking out Demopoulos. She's not submitting Demopoulos. So I would say, instead of playing the time props here, if you're on one side or the other, if you're on the Demopoulos side, take her to win inside the distance or by submission. And if you're on the Juarez side, take her to win by decision, because, you're not finishing Demopoulos. So I think that would be the way that I would play the time props here. But like I say, let's get a little lathered up. Let's watch a fight before we bet on one this year. Let's take it nice and slow. We got 52 weeks. Well, we got 50 weeks, and then maybe we're going to lose the last 2 weeks of the year. So maybe we got 48 weeks, but you know how it goes, man. We could take our time here, Brady.
Yeah, for sure. And I might not even watch this fight, but DXJC with the comment of the year: if anyone knows how to handle 6 inches, it's Vanessa Demopoulos. And that is completely true. Maybe that's why money is coming in on her. That is for sure. But yeah, I think that's enough of this fight. I'm sick of talking about it already. But let's move on to the next one, which is a really good fight. We have Brian Kelleher going against Saeed Yakub Kakhramonov. We have Kelleher, who is 35 years old, 5'6", with a 66-inch reach. Kakhramonov, 26 years old, 5'7", with a 69.5-inch reach. And I think the tail of the tape really sticks out a lot for me in this fight. So Kelleher is a 35-year-old bantamweight. He's getting up there in age, not good. Kakhramonov, he's 26. This guy is very young, and he's improving rapidly. And you take a look at some of this guy's fights outside of the UFC, and I'm actually really impressed. And he's only going to be getting better. So we have a guy that's a veteran in Kelleher who is getting up there in age. We have a young up-and-comer who's only improving in Kakhramonov. I think that's something to mention. And then not only that, we have Kakhramonov, who's going to be taller, a 1-inch height advantage, and then also have a 3.5-inch reach advantage. So the tail of the tape massively in favor of Kakhramonov, but we know that Kelleher is definitely a tricky veteran. We take a look at the last few fights. Kakhramonov is 4-1 in his last 5 fights. He did come in to the UFC against Trevin Jones, and that was on a couple days short notice. I think he missed weight in that fight as well. And in that fight, I was kind of worried about the gas tank of Kakhramonov, but it was, Trevin Jones that looked like he was slowing down. Kakhramonov was able to get that 3rd round submission. Very impressive performance. A lot of people were very high on Trevin Jones at that time. But yeah, 4-1 in his last 5 fights, only lost to Pipe Vargas in a fight that he was winning, and then got kneed in the 3rd round, got knocked out there. Brian Kelleher, he is 3-2 in his last 5 fights, had that upset win against Hunter Azure, won by knockout. He lost a decision to Cody Stamann, and then he goes on a 3-fight win streak, beating Ray Rodriguez by sub. Never mind, he lost to Ricky Simone and then by decision, and then he beat Domingo Pilarte by decision as well. So, yeah, interesting fight. You have the young up-and-comer in Kakramanov going against the veteran in Brian Kelleher. What are your thoughts on this one, Weezy?
My thoughts is that this is definitely in the running for fight of the night. This is going to be fantastic. I watched all the tape on Kakramanov, and for a guy with only 11 professional fights, his level of competition outside the UFC is about as good as you could expect it to be coming in at this young age. His wrestling is good. His gas tank is good. When he's striking, he's throwing with a ton of power and really looking to take your head off. He's a really good prospect, in my opinion. And then you're matching him up against a guy that's not a big step up in competition for a guy who's fighting Oscar, for a guy who's fighting Umar Nurmagomedov. Even Trevin Jones as a UFC debut is a stiff test, a guy that's a no-gi grappling champion with over 20 professional fights. So, I would say it's a big step up for Kakramanov, but that's really not the case here. Kelleher has fought better competition, but he hasn't beaten better competition, in my opinion, than Kakramanov that has thus far in his career. But it's a big experience advantage. We can't ignore it. 24 fights for Brian Kelleher. Over 200, about 200 more minutes in the pro cage. About 6 more years as a pro. 11 more fights at the UFC level. About 80 more minutes, about 90 more minutes in the UFC cage. Both of these guys' finish numbers are almost identical. If you look at how they finish fights, 43% by sub, 35% by knockout for Kelleher, which is a 78% finish rate. And we got a 77% finish rate for Kakramanov with almost the same ratio of submissions to knockouts as Kelleher. Both of these guys are getting finished in about 50% of their losses. We don't have much. We only got one fight for Kakramanov here, so we can't put too much weight into the striking statistics. But hell, man, he only absorbed 0.82 significant strikes per minute in a short notice debut against a 2-0 UFC fighter in Trevin Jones. So very impressive debut by Kakramanov on short notice. And we see that Kelleher is actually absorbing about 1.1 more significant strikes per minute than he's landing. 53.5% striking defense. He's showing decent power. He's been knocked down a couple of times. If we look at the grappling stats here, we see that Kelleher spends time in control time positions about 42% of the time. He's an efficient wrestler, I would say, in that he's out-controlling his opponents by about 9% is Kelleher, but he's shot just as many takedowns as his opponents have. So even though his opponents are taking him down more, he's getting up quicker and he's accruing more control time when he's on top. So Kelleher has been he's been a dangerous grappler. He's got a fantastic guillotine that you have to respect if you're going to try to take him down. But Kakramanov 2 for 7 on his takedown attempts against Trevin Jones. He got about 7% control time, but he allowed 61% control time. That was mostly up against the fence, but when Trevin took him down at the end of the first or the second, I forget which round it was, he put Kakramanov's back on the canvas and kept it there for about a minute and a half. But Kakramanov knew that Jones is a very dangerous grappler. Obviously, the strength of schedule competition here is in favor of Kelleher because he's just fought much better competition, guys like Stamann and Simon and Azure, and the guys before that too. He's been fighting some really good guys. Kakramanov, though, like I say, this guy is not like he came in with a padded record fighting a bunch of 0-10 bums like he's Jordan Wright or something. This guy has had, he's had some really good competition outside of the UFC, guys that like Oscar and Pipe Vargas and Tyson Lin and Umar Nurmagomedov, and that was a very, very close fight. Kind of reminds me of Morozov a little bit in terms of having some really good experience outside of the organization and having come in fighting UFC level competition. But Morozov is a little bit older than Kakramanov. Long story short, I think this guy is a fantastic prospect. I like everything that Kelleher brings to the table as well. You can't just lay the juice on Kakramanov without admitting to yourself that this is going to be a very tricky, very well-rounded veteran that he's fighting here in Kelleher. That all being said, I like that 9 years younger. I like the size advantage. I like the youth. I like the power in the hands, and I like the well-roundedness and the conditioning of Kakramanov. I think he gets the job done on Saturday. How are you looking at this one?
Yeah, I feel the same way. Shout out to Brian, what's up, boys? Final MMA content. And then Monk with a kind of a bold prediction here. Kakramanov with a third round sub once again. And he said Kelleher has been sub 6 times, and he has. But yeah, I kind of see the fight the same way. And it's the line seems about accurate to me. I mean, Kakramanov coming in, he opened up -170. He's now -157 on BetOnline. Kelleher opened up +145. He's now +137. So Kelleher is getting some respect. I think that Kakramanov definitely should be a favorite, but not too wide of a favorite. And I really like a lot of things I see out of this guy. And again, he's very young. We're going to see massive improvements, whereas Kelleher, I don't think we're going to see those improvements. I think we might see a decline very soon. 35-year-old bantamweight, we always talk about that age where they do start to slow down, and we try to avoid those guys that are getting past that 35-year age mark. But yeah, Kakramanov, he's going to have the striking advantage in my opinion. His wrestling's really good. I was really impressed with what I saw outside of the UFC in terms of the wrestling, and his grappling defense looked really good to me. I mean, Kelleher's live to submit a lot of people, but I feel like Kakramanov can, stay safe on top, mixing the takedowns. And then I think the striking will be in his favor as well. So yeah, I like Kakramanov, but I'm glad to see that Kelleher is not completely getting counted out, and he shouldn't be, because he's a very tricky veteran that has fought the better competition. So Kakramanov -157. I think the line's about right. Probably not going to play it. And then the fight goes to decision is +105. Fight doesn't go to decision, -135. The over 2.5 rounds is -115. The under 2.5 rounds is -115 as well. Don't really like any props on this one, Weezy. You liking any props on this one? And then also any thoughts on the money line?
Yeah, these guys are good finishers. In the 8 combined UFC wins for Kelleher and Kakramanov, we've got 73% there. So that would be 6 out of 8. 75% combined finish rate in the wins for these guys, and in the losses, 3 out of the 5 losses. So it does skew these bantamweight fights on since 2013 finished just under 50% of the time. So with these guys with good finish rates in wins and losses, I could see an under bet coming in here. A fight doesn't go to decision bet. I would be interested in something like that if I didn't have to pay up more than like -120, -130. Where did you say it was? The fight doesn't go?
Like -135.
Yeah, it feels about where it should be for bantamweights. But both of these guys are so dangerous. Yeah, I'm probably going to be staying away from the time props here. I think there's some value on Kelleher as an underdog here, but this is another one. I think this is a great fight, and I'm not leaning one way or the other. So I think I'm just going to enjoy a couple of fantastic all-action fighters battle it out here and see if Kelleher at the age of 35 can still knock off some of these young lions here like Kakramanov. So it's going to be very interesting. But I am picking Kakramanov to win.
Sounds good to me. Let's keep moving it on. We have the next fight, Dakota Bush going against Slava Borshchev, and this is probably 2 of the best nicknames on the card going against each other. We have Dakota Harry Bush going against Slava Claus. So we'll see who wins this fight. We have Bush, who is 27 years old, 5'10", with a 73-inch reach. Borshchev, he is 30 years old, 5'11", with a 69-inch reach. So Bush, he's going to be 3 years younger. He's going to be at a 1-inch height disadvantage, but he will have a 4-inch reach advantage. We take a look at the last few fights. Dakota Bush made his debut against Austin Hubbard. I think it was on short notice. I'm not completely sure. Yeah, I think it was. But he lost by decision in that fight. But he is 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Borshchev, he is 4-1 in his last 5 fights. Had a nice knockout win on the Contender Series a few months back. And he's making his debut here. So, yeah, lots of hype on Borshchev. And I completely get it. This guy is very likable. Kickboxing background, some boxing in his background as well. And this guy's striking is no joke. We have a classic case of striker versus grappler where Borshchev's going to want to keep it on the feet, and Bush is going to want to get this fight down to the mat. I think when it is on the feet, it's going to be Borshchev all day. But Bush is a very solid grappler. He's putting in some work with Glory MMA and Fitness. I saw on his Instagram, and for some reason, he's putting in some work with Jake Collier, out of all people. But so Glory MMA is pretty good. And again, he's a good grappler, good wrestler. A lot of his finishes do come in that first round, so he goes after it. But I do like that he has kind of the cardio to push a pace throughout 3 rounds as well, outside of the Hubbard fight, which, again, I think he took it on short notice. But, yeah, Weezy, we got a striker in Borshchev versus a grappler in Bush. Who you like in this one?
Yeah, fantastic striker in Borshchev. This guy has something like over 200 or 300 kickboxing matches to his credit. So the guy is just absolutely beautiful on the feet to watch. And if you want to see something else that's beautiful to watch, it's that celebration when he knocks somebody out, that awesome dance. You know, funny story, I actually blew out my hamstring in college trying to do that dance at a party to impress some girls. I went down like a sack of potatoes, dude. You want to know, that thing is fucking hard to do, dude. And I was young. I was in good shape. It's not like I am now, dude. This was when I was like 20. And that is not an easy dance to do. And it took me about 3 weeks before I could walk correctly after the first ever pulled hamstring in my life. So much respect to Borshchev for being able to pull off that dance with dignity and grace the way that he does. But he is a fantastic striker, so fun to watch. And Dakota Bush is really good at using his striking to kind of get inside, force takedown attempts. And then when he takes people down, he's not really just looking to lay on top of you in a crew control time. He's actively looking to get to your back and finish the fight. So when you watch the tape on Borshchev, you see that this guy gets taken down in every single fight that he is involved in. His takedown defense is not good. His get-up game, however, is very good. As soon as he gets taken down, he doesn't accept the position, and he works to get back to his feet. And that's going to be very important here. He's going to need to do that without giving up his back to Bush, because I can almost guarantee that Bush will get a takedown or two here as long as he doesn't get starched in the first 10 seconds by Borshchev, which is certainly a possibility with as beautiful a striker as Borshchev is. And then when you watch the tape on Bush, you see that, you know, he does fall in love with his hands a little bit sometimes. He better not do that on Saturday, because he's not going to fare well on the feet against Borshchev here. But he uses that striking to get inside. He'll work to your back. But when he's losing fights, it's because he's losing the wrestling battle. I think you watched the tape on this guy too, and you saw that when he's losing, it's because he's giving up control time on the ground. So hopefully, if Bush is planning a good game plan here that'll give him a good chance to win, he'll understand that his best chance is with his wrestling, with control time, and trying to get a submission on the ground, because we don't have a lot of stats here to go on. But when you just look at the one fight that this guy has had, 67% striking accuracy for Borshchev, 7.5 significant strikes per minute, landed a knockdown on 2.5% of the significant strikes that he landed. Even though his opponents threw 3.3 more significant strike attempts per minute, Borshchev still outlanded him by 1 significant strike a minute. So 67% striking accuracy, 54% striking defense, a lot of power, and he's kind of like a guy that gets more dangerous as the fight goes on. Borshchev's conditioning, if you watch the tape on this guy, is never in question. And Dakota Bush as well. His conditioning really abandoned him in the Austin Hubbard fight, but he took that fight on 2 days' notice. When you watch the rest of the regional scene footage on Dakota Harry Bush, you see that he can push that pace for a long period of time. He does have a pretty good gas tank. So we don't have a lot of stats on these guys, 1 UFC fight for each of them. But what we do know is that Dakota is a great wrestler and Borshchev has poor takedown defense, and that Dakota can be controlled on the ground, but Borshchev, that's really not his game. His game is elite striking, and I can't wait to see this fight. But I was saying that there was value in the Bush line at plus 170 3 or 4 days ago. I see that some money has come in on Bush, and now he's sitting here at about plus 150. But he's got 5 more professional fights, 50 more minutes of cage time. And, you know, he's been a pro mixed martial artist, I should say, for 3 years longer. than Borshchev has. We've got to keep in mind that while Borshchev is an elite kickboxer, his MMA career is less than 3 years long, and that if people continue to attack his lack of wrestling takedown defense, that he might give up a lot of minutes on the ground here, and this fight might wind up being a lot closer than people think it will be.
Yeah, I feel like it could be, closer. I am going to lean the Borshchev side, but yeah, I really don't like the line. We see that Borshchev opened up as a plus 125 dog, actually, which is interesting. He's now minus 180. Dakota Bush opened up as a minus 145 favorite, and he's now a plus 155 dog. So the line flipped there. And, I like Borshchev here. We talked about it a little bit. His takedown defense is questionable. He does get taken down, but he has a very good get-up game. And he is training at a very good camp in Team Alpha Male as well. So I do expect that to improve. And I just think that there's going to be a big discrepancy on the feet. I mean, Borshchev's striking is no joke. Bush is going to have to get this fight down to the mat early and often. And I feel like if Borshchev's able to, get taken down, if he gets backed up, when it is on the feet, I feel like he's going to be winning, the majority of those exchanges, potentially knocking out Bush. But I'm kind of leaning Borshchev by decision potentially. Dakota Bush, he's very, very tough. He's never been knocked out, and Borshchev could potentially be the first one. But I kind of like Borshchev to, stuff some takedowns. If he does get taken down, get back up, keep it on the feet, and outpoint Bush on the feet for 3 rounds. But another prop that potentially might interest me would be Bush by submission. We don't have that out yet, but we do see that Bush inside the distance is plus 420, because I do think if Bush is able to get it down to the mat, he is a very good grappler. Would not shock me if he did submit Borshchev, but I'm going to pick Borshchev. But yeah, like you said, I think there is some value on the Bush side. Any thoughts on the money line? You said you think it's off a little bit. And then also we have the over 2.5 rounds plus 115, and the under 2.5 rounds is minus 145. I was telling you the only problem I have with that is both guys have never been finished, and we are paying some juice for that. So what are your thoughts on those?
Yeah, it's neither guy has been finished, so it's really hard to pick fight doesn't go to decision, or to pick an inside the distance for either one of these guys, even though they've been great finishers in their own right. A 75% finish rate in 8 wins for Bush, an 80% finish rate in 5 wins for Borshchev. So both of these guys have the ability to be able to knock people out, but they're both really tough. And like we say, Borshchev, he has been taken down in every damn fight that he's been in. You watch the fight with the anabolic Arab Ali Zebian. Zebian's taken him down over and over and over again, but you see that Borshchev never gets tired. He never stops trying to get to his feet. So I would lean the over here, simply because neither one of these guys has ever been finished, and this fight could really get greasy. Because if Bush goes in with the game plan, like, I am not going to strike with this dude, he could potentially win a lot of minutes. And if you watch some of these previous fights with Borshchev, when he's not standing at range and striking, he's losing a lot of minutes. So it could wind up going the distance. I don't think this fight going the distance is a bad bet at all. What did you say fight goes to decision is?
Plus 145.
See, I like that because, like, in my stats here, I can look at the this is a lightweight fight, right?
Let me double check. It is 155.
Yeah, so lightweight fights since 2013 are only finishing 50% of the time. So that's like a plus 100 bet for fight goes to decision. You're getting even better than that for 2 guys that have never been finished before. That would probably be the bet that the analytics would be telling me to make here.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to pass. I mean, the line, it does seem wide, but there is a lot of hype on Borshchev, so we'll see what happens. I'm going to pick Borshchev, but if I was betting it, it probably would be a dog or pass. Would you be interested in any Bush submission line? It's not out yet, but I'm assuming it's going to be like around like plus 500, plus 600.
Yeah, I would be, especially if I was thinking about betting Bush, that way I could bet a quarter unit to win over a unit instead of having to bet, almost like 2/3 of a unit to win a unit. If I just bet the straight money line, say at plus 150. So it's a way to win the same amount of money with the best win condition for the fighter. And I think that, it's hard to see Dakota Bush getting like 12 minutes of control time and winning a decision here. But that is a possible outcome. I just think if he gets this fight to the ground, he's going to be looking to get this dude's back and finish him. He's done an excellent job of that on the regional scene. And, Slava just doesn't have a ton of grappling experience, but he is training at the kind of camp where he can get that kind of experience. So he should be getting better at it. I just still think it's a good path for Bush.
Yeah, for sure. The 90s liking Bush by sub. Rogue saying Borshchev is a murderer. Yes, he is. Bush has not faced anybody with the type of finishing ability. I do agree with that. DXJC saying Bush has been on a lose one, win two pattern since his first pro loss in MMA. Pattern dictates a win there. Robert saying Borshchev KO. Monk saying gonna make dinner. Hopefully you'll be finished talking about the Pickett fight. Yeah, I hope we were finished with that one pretty fast as well. The 90s saying Styles makes fights. Both these could easily finish each other. It could happen. It definitely could, but I just don't want to lay like chalk -150 just about on a violence bet there. And I think like the fight doesn't go like -170. So I think I'm going to pass on this fight as a whole, but the pick for me will be Borshchev. We'll keep moving on to the next fight. We have a very good, I'm really looking forward to this fight. We have Gabriel Benítez going against TJ Brown. We have Benítez, who is 33 years old, 5'8", with a 71-inch reach. TJ Brown, 31 years old, 5'9", with a 72-inch reach. So the tail of the tape advantage is going to go to TJ Brown. Brown's going to be 2 years younger. He's going to have a 1-inch height advantage and also a 1-inch reach advantage as well. He is doing some work at Glory MMA and Fitness. He's also doing some work with Bryce Mitchell. Apparently, they're good buddies, and Bryce Mitchell will actually be in his corner for this fight, which is pretty interesting as well. We'll take a look at the last few fights. We see Benítez. He is 2-3 in his last 5 fights, a knockout win over Humberto Bandené, a knockout loss against Sadiq Youssef, a decision loss to Omar Morales, a knockout win against Justin James, and then a knockout loss against Billy Quarantillo. As far as TJ Brown, he is 3-2 in his last 5 fights, had a debut against Jordan Griffin in a fight where this guy looked phenomenal. I remember, having some on DraftKings, and this guy put up like 70 or 80 points just in a round and a half in a loss. He went out there and took down Jordan Griffin multiple times, got him in some pretty, dangerous spots, and then kind of slowed down, gassed out a little bit in that second, and Jordan Griffin submitted him. But up until that, he was looking very good. And then after that, he did lose a decision to Danny Chavez. Probably one of the worst game plans I've ever seen in my life, where I was really expecting Brown to come in there, take down Chavez, use that amazing wrestling, use that brown belt. Now he's a black belt, and get this guy down to the mat. But no, he wanted to stand with Chavez the whole time, get his legs kicked off, and ends up losing a pretty dominant decision for Chavez, honestly, winning every single round because, Brown would not shoot a takedown. So the IQ is kind of iffy for me. And then he goes back against Kai Kamaka. This is a fight where he didn't go for many takedowns. I think he got a couple, but his striking looked much, much better, the best ever have. So this guy, he's 31 years old. He's at a good camp. He's improving. He's now a BJJ black belt. He's working with good guys. It's going to be a really good fight here. I think these guys are going to absolutely go to war. Weezy, I think this is probably one of my favorite fights on the card. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, I was just watching tape on these guys. TJ Brown late last night and a lot of Benítez today. And I mean, they're fun fighters to watch. TJ Brown's good all around. Benítez, not great takedown defense, but a fantastic get-up game, a great front choke game for when people are trying to take him down. And he's a predictable fighter in that Benítez got 11 UFC fights, and he's only attempted 2 takedowns in the UFC. So you know that this guy prefers to keep it standing. He wants to just stay on the feet, use that kickboxing game. He's got a left leg that he throws with vigor. And, Javier Mendez always said that Benítez was the hardest kicker that he's ever held pads for. So it's going to be a good fight. Like you said, TJ Brown with a nice little advantage here in the measurables, being younger, taller, and having a reach advantage. TJ Brown fights out of both stances here, while Benítez is a southpaw. Is TJ fighting or training out of Glory for this one? Do you remember? I know you listened to that interview with him.
Yeah, he's doing some work at Glory and then somewhere else. He's like going back and forth, I think.
Yeah, like West Side Fight Team, I know is where he spent a lot of his time younger in his career, and I think maybe he's still out of there, but I do know that he's back and forth, so that's good. And we look at TJ Brown with a guy with 4 UFC fights is kind of like a newcomer, but he's not, man. Ton of fights in this guy's career, an 8-year career and 23 fights. So Brown, and he's a guy who's actually had some injuries to his hand, I believe. Has been very, very active when he hasn't been hurt. So Brown, with 23 professional fights and 4 UFC fights, is a lot more experienced than people think he is. But yeah, it's definitely Benítez with 8 more fights, 100 more pro minutes, and 6 more years as a pro. So it's Benítez who's more experienced, and he's got 7 more fights at the UFC level and twice as much UFC cage time as TJ Brown. If we look at the finish rates for both of these guys, they're both excellent finishers. 87% finish rate and 15 wins for TJ Brown. We got that's 13 out of 15 wins, by the way. And then we've got in 22 wins, we've got a 81% finish rate for Gabriel Benítez. So that's 18 out of 22 wins there. So, both these guys are finishing. And if we look at the losing too, 5 out of 9 Benítez's losses have come inside the distance. And for TJ Brown, it's 6 out of 8. So 11 out of 17 losses coming inside the distance for these guys. Benítez landing about 0.55 more significant strikes than he absorbs. He's showing an excellent 65% striking defense on the feet and landing a knockdown on almost 1% of the significant strikes that he lands. So that's 4 knockdowns in 11 UFC fights. TJ Brown has never landed a knockdown, and he has been knocked down twice in 142 significant strikes absorbed. It's Benítez who's much better defensively. When you watch the tape on TJ Brown, he's a good striker. He's long. He uses all his weapons pretty well, but he absorbs a lot of big shots. And from some guys that you really wouldn't expect to be landing big shots. So I think that there's a big chance here that Gabriel Benítez can land a bomb and get TJ Brown in quite a bit of trouble here. And like we mentioned earlier, Benítez doesn't go for takedowns. Only 2 takedown attempts in 11 fights and only 1 takedown. But TJ Brown has attempted 24 takedowns in 4 fights. He's gotten more than half of them, and he's averaging 4.07 takedowns per 15 minutes, but just under 18% control time. So that's about 9 minutes of control time on 14 takedowns. So when he gets the takedowns, he doesn't stay there often, but he does have a submission to his credit in the UFC. He got that against Dylan Lockhart in the 3rd round in his UFC debut, which was a Contender Series fight. Yep. And TJ Brown has shown poor takedown defense. That won't bother him here because Gabriel Benítez is not going to try to take him down. Gabriel Benítez showing 56% takedown defense, and he's being taken down 3.07 times per 15 minutes, and he's been controlled just over 25% of his UFC career. So that's about 26 minutes of control time that Benítez has allowed on 21 takedowns. So he can be controlled. If you look at the Barzola fight in particular, he got up every time, but then as the fight wore on, as the fight went deeper into the 3rd round, you saw Barzola getting more and more control time with each takedown that he got. So Benítez, you'd like to see him stuff more takedowns, but he does such a good job of getting up that it usually doesn't cost him on the scorecards after a fight is over. And when we look at the strength of schedule, it's Benítez all day. He's fought the more experienced competition with better win-loss records. He's got better wins, and he's lost to better competition as well. So, yeah, definitely Benítez with the experience advantage, the strength of schedule advantage, and the striking advantage, while I would say that TJ Brown has the grappling advantage, and being a little bit younger and a little bit bigger in the immeasurables has an advantage there. It should be a pretty close fight. Benítez, while he does have that really good striking defense at almost 66%, he's been knocked down 3 times in 11 fights, so it's not like he can't have his chin cracked either. And like you mentioned, we saw some improvements in the last outing out of TJ Brown and his striking. The guy's good all around. So it's a very interesting fight. Benítez is a decent-sized favorite. There could be some money line value here on TJ Brown, but I'd be interested to look at the totals here too.
Yeah, this is a really close fight to call for me. It's a tough one because I feel like TJ Brown has all the tools to win this fight. You take a look at this guy, like outside of the UFC, especially on the Contender Series, like this guy's wrestling is no joke and his grappling is no joke. Like I mentioned, he's now a black belt in BJJ. I feel like, he could exploit that 56% takedown defense of Benítez, get some control time, maybe even get a submission. Benítez has been submitted a few times in his career. So I feel like Brown, definitely has the tools to do so. And the reason I cannot bet Brown is just going back to that Chavez fight. Like, what was he thinking? Showing such poor fight IQ. Like, it obviously was not working out on the feet. Why not try to mix in some takedowns? And when he finally decided he wants to mix in takedowns, like in the late 2nd round, third round, it was already too late. His legs are already beat up very bad. And yeah, Benítez is going to have the striking advantage here. And it just matters about the game plan of TJ Brown. If he comes in here, like in the Chavez fight, wants to stand and strike with Benítez, I think he's going to lose, maybe even get knocked out. But if he can come in here, mix in takedowns, I think it's a very, very close fight. So I can't trust TJ Brown. I'm trying to stay away from guys with questionable fight IQ. Like even in his interview, and you can't, take into account a lot of the things these guys say, but he was talking about going out there and knocking out Benítez. Like, I don't want to hear that. I want to hear you say, I'm going to go out and take him down and submit him, which he said he might do that as well. So I just can't trust him. But I think I will pick TJ Brown to win. Like I said, I think he has all the tools. It's just I don't know if I can put my money on a fighter like him. But yeah, we'll see. Benítez opened up minus 145. He's now minus 177. TJ Brown opened up plus 125. He is now plus 152. This is where more of my interest is. So the fight goes to decision is minus 105. The fight doesn't go to decision is minus 125. The over is minus 140. The under 2.5 is plus 110. I have a lot of interest in that. You talked about the finish rates. We see that Gabriel Benítez 82% finish rate, TJ Brown an 87% finish rate. And then as far as the losses, Benítez has been knocked out 3 times and submitted 2 times, whereas Brown, he's been knocked out 3 times and submitted 3 times. I feel like Brown could potentially get a submission, and I feel like Benítez could potentially get a knockout here. So I'm actually liking some violence on this fight here, and this is a card where I might have maybe one violence bet, and this is what that violence bet might be. It does look like money is coming in on the fight doesn't go. I don't have access to it. It's on 5 dimes minus 125, but money's coming in on that. We see that Benítez inside the distance is plus 170. Brown inside the distance is plus 430. That's interesting. Benítez by decision plus 220, and then Brown by decision plus 330. Do any of those props interest you? And then also any thoughts on the money line? Do you think it's too wide? Do you think it could be wider? What do you think about the props in that?
Yeah, I feel like it's a lot to lay on Benítez because, he hasn't really dominated anybody that wasn't what you would call maybe not quite UFC level. Like a win over Justin James was nice. He landed that nice knee, just collapsed him. The win over Bantamweight was nice, but those are the wins that he's getting where he's kind of starching dudes. And, they're not with the UFC anymore. This guy Brown has been around for a while. He's kind of on the lower level. But like you said, both of these guys have great finishing chops. Both of these guys are getting finished in losses. In the 7 combined UFC losses between these guys, we've got 4 of them finishing inside the distance. The only problem is, and this is not a problem for the under bet, if you're leaning either side here, I want to see these guys on the scale. Benítez has notoriously had problems making 145, and TJ Brown is even bigger than Benítez is. So, yeah, I want to see both of these guys on the scale before I start to look at any of this stuff a little bit closer. But I've watched all the tape on these guys, and I'm not leaning one way or another. So that's telling me that the value is probably on TJ Brown here. But, God, I'm having a hard time getting to a bet on this one, dude.
Yeah, I absolutely think the value's on TJ Brown, but, something that got me in trouble a lot last year is where I said, dude, this guy's going to have such a big advantage if he uses his takedowns, if he uses his wrestling. And we have a prime example in that Chavez fight where he refused to do that. So can I trust him? No, but I will pick him to do that, but I'm not putting my money on it. But what I will put my money on potentially is the under 2.5, and those weight cutting issues, I think only, makes it a little bit better there. So yeah, I'm liking some violence here. I think somebody does get finished one way or another. Anything else on this fight, Weezy?
No, I think it's a great fight again, but yeah, I think it's close. I'm having a hard time picking out bets here. Like I say, we're easing into this year, dude. We're taking it nice and slow. Let's not force anything early in the year.
100% agree. Don't bet on Demopoulos or Juarez. Let's do that. What is up, Chris? Great to see Big Brady and Uncle Weezy, the dynamic duo. Shout out to Chris. Welcome back. All right. So we'll move on to the next fight, and we have one that I'm very excited to talk about. We have Court McGee going against Ramiz Brahimaj. We have Court McGee, 37 years old, 5'11" with a 75-inch reach. Ramiz Brahimaj, 29 years old, 5'9", 72-inch reach. McGee, he's going to be 8 years older, but he's going to have a 1-inch height advantage and a 3-inch reach advantage. And we take a look at their last couple fights. We see that McGee is 2-3 in his last 5 fights. a decision win against Alex Garcia, a decision loss to Diego Lima, a decision loss to Sean Brady, a decision loss to Carlos Condit, and then a win against Claudio Silva. As far as Ramiz Brahimaj, we talked about poor fight IQ in the last fight in TJ Brown, going out there against Chavez, deciding not to wrestle. This was probably one of the worst game plans I could remember off the top of my head. Max Griffin against Ramiz Brahimaj, where Brahimaj has a 100% finish rate, and all 100% of those wins are by submission, and every single one of those but one are in the first round. So, you tape the fight, you look through it, and you're expecting Ramiz Brahimaj to go out there and do what he's always done, which is use that phenomenal wrestling, use that phenomenal grappling, take down Max Griffin and get him out of there. But he comes in there and shoots 0 takedowns, and my jaw is just dropped the whole fight. I'm like, what is going on? I'm all over this dude in DraftKings. I'm expecting a ton of takedowns, and he comes out there and shoots 0, gets his ear taken off. I'm like, what the heck? And it's just going back to, you can't trust fighters with poor fight IQ. With that said, he did go back in his next fight against Sasha Palatnikov, and he went out there, he took him down and submitted him. So, this guy has the skills. It's just, what's his game plan going to be? Is he going to come in here, try to strike with McGee for 3 rounds like he did in Griffin? Or is he going to try to, take down McGee, use that wrestling, which that's his game. He has really good wrestling, really good grappling, and try to get McGee out of there. So just another bad case of fight IQ there with Brahimaj. But yeah, we have a veteran here in McGee, and we've fought the better competition. He has a lot more fights on his record against the young up-and-comer Ramiz Brahimaj. This guy's a prospect that I like. I think if he does, fight smart, he can get a lot of wins and a lot of submissions. I really like this guy. So, Weezy, what do you think about this fight? We had the veteran versus the young Brahimaj.
It's a good fight. It's an interesting fight. And I have to bring up one thing here, is we do have to question Brahimaj's fight IQ, but let's not forget the Carlos Condit versus Court McGee fight.
Yeah.
Court McGee shot 0 takedowns against the guy who over 20 years in the UFC has the worst takedown defense out of any welterweight in the history of the UFC. It's Carlos Condit, not one takedown attempt for Court McGee. So both of these guys have shown despicable fight IQ in the past.
Terrible.
So yeah, man, I mean, just awful. So we could talk about it on both sides. But before we get into all the other numbers, let's just talk Court McGee here and talk about some of the grapplers that he's faced in the past, because it's very, very important. Claudio Hannibal Silva, Sean Brady. We got Ben Saunders, a great guard grappler. Dominique Steele, a great wrestler. Ryan LaFleur, fantastic wrestler, grappler. So this guy, even Philippou and Ryan Jensen, so he's fought some great guys. You go back and you watch that Sean Brady fight, and Sean Brady managed only 42 seconds of control time against Court McGee on 3 takedown attempts and 2 takedowns. So Brahimaj's path to victory here is through the grappling. Everybody knows it. We can look at the stats for this guy and see that he's finished 100% of his wins by submission. We look at the win against Palatnikov. This is how he gets it. He takes people down, and then he uses that fantastic top game in order to get submissions. Court McGee has only been finished in 1 time in 10 professional losses and 30 professional fights, and it was by KO. Court McGee, I believe, is a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and has faced, frankly, better grapplers than Brahimaj at this point. I think Sean Brady's better than Brahimaj. I don't think that anybody would really argue with that at this point. So, as a matter of fact, we saw Sean Brady go out there and blanket one of the welterweight division's top grapplers in Michael Chiesa. So Court McGee has faced the way better brand of competition here, and that is very important. What's also important when we talk about fight IQ, Brady, is you got 2 guys with bad fight IQ. Now, the fight starts on the feet, and that's where Court McGee's going to have the advantage that we think, right? Because he throws a ton of volume, because he's just better on the feet than Brahimaj. So it's going to be the guy with the bad fight IQ in Brahimaj that has to make the good decisions and then have those decisions work out here. So I'm leaning McGee. I'm leaning McGee because he's got 18 more professional fights and almost 250 more minutes of cage time. He's got 16 more UFC fights and about 230 more minutes in the UFC cage. He's only been finished once in 30 professional fights, has Court McGee. He leads the welterweight division in volume thrown with 13 significant strike attempts per minute over an 18-fight sample size. He lands one more significant strike per minute than he absorbs. He's showing over 61% striking defense, 70% takedown defense. But here's the big number, Brady, in my opinion. In 18 UFC fights, Court McGee has had 43 takedowns shot against him. His opponents have gotten 13 takedowns. And in those 250 minutes in the cage and 43 takedown attempts, his opponents have only managed to control him a grand total of 12 minutes in the UFC cage. So if you think that Brahimaj's path is to take this guy down, to hold him down for 3 minutes or get a submission, he would be the first person to hold this guy down more than even 3 minutes in a fight. Let's do a little fun little we got a ton of fights here for Court McGee. I'm going to go through the most amount of control time that he's ever allowed in a fight. It's 186 seconds of control time against Alex Garcia back in 2018. Alex Garcia in that fight shot 4 takedowns, only got 1 of them, and basically the control time was up against the fence. That's the most amount of time in 20 UFC fights that this guy has ever been controlled in a 15-minute fight, and that's 3 minutes. So there's a lot of stats here that really are in favor of Court McGee. The volume on the feet, the striking defense, the experience, the takedown defense, the strength of schedule is absolutely huge. And the fact that better grapplers than Brahimaj haven't been able to control this guy for more than 3 minutes. So everything here is leading me to a Court McGee pick, probably Court McGee by decision, I would say. But, you know, you never know if he could finish as well. But the numbers here are very interesting and very telling, in my opinion, more so than any of the fights that we've covered up to this point.
Yep, I like Court McGee quite a bit. You know, he's not like some bum grappler. I mean, you touched on it there, and I think the one thing that sticks out to me in terms of the stats is he's only been controlled 5% of the time. Like, that's crazy. And that's, like you said, in 18 UFC fights, that's in 43 takedown attempts that he's only getting controlled 5% of the time. And you can go back and watch some of his fights against Sean Brady. He got taken down twice, but he was able to just pop right back up. And like you said, Sean Brady is, you know, a much better grappler than Ramiz Brahimaj. And I guess what did it for me was the cardio of Brahimaj, because, you know, this is a guy where, you know, he's been out of the first round a couple times, and each time he's been out of the first round, I just did not like what I saw in terms of, you know, the cardio. He does slow down a lot after that first round, especially in fights where he is implementing a very wrestling-heavy game plan. So my concern for Brahimaj is if he does come out here and if he does fight smart and take down Court McGee, which I do expect early, and if he's not able to submit Court McGee, who, by the way, has not been submitted in 30 fights, if this does get into that second round, into the third round, you know, how is Brahimaj going to look? You know, we know that Court McGee is going to have a cardio advantage, a striking advantage, the experience advantage, level of competition. Brahimaj's level of competition is like very suspect. I mean, the best fighter he's fought was Max Griffin. Other than that, you know, some very questionable names on there. And yes, he's finishing them, but again, very questionable compared to Court McGee, who has fought, you know, a lot better guys. So, yeah, I like Court McGee here. We do take a look at the line. It's a straight pick 'em right now. We see that McGee opened up as a minus 120 favorite. It's now minus 110. Brahimaj opened up plus 100. It's now minus 110. I think this line's actually going to flip in favor of Brahimaj potentially. I'm going to be patient. You know, I've been patient the last, 3-4 weeks. If I can get Court McGee at plus money, I would not mind that at all. People in the chat are talking about the over 2.5, which is interesting. I mean, I think it goes over 2.5, but it's kind of weird that the over 2.5 is minus 175 when Brahimaj is minus 110, and Brahimaj has never won a fight over the 2.5 round mark. I don't think Brahimaj has even won a fight over the 1.5 round mark. Again, like most of his fights besides one, he won it in the first round. So Yeah, I think it goes over as well, and I am leaning Court McGee. McGee by decision is plus 185. I think I just take the money line at that point, but I'm liking McGee in terms of the money line, but I'm going to wait it out and see where that line goes, Weezy.
Yeah, man, and the most important thing about this fight is the conditioning. I can't believe I forgot to talk about that. You absolutely nailed it. The wrestling heavy game plan that Brahimaj will have to employ in order to get this fight where he's going to have it, where he's going to be at his strongest, have his best win condition, is the kind of game plan that plays right into Court McGee's hands because he's so well conditioned. And then when you look at the feet, we talked about volume, right? And we know that Brahimaj had a 15-minute striking battle with Max Griffin. He threw 8.56 significant strikes a minute, and his opponent, Griffin, threw 11.5. So he was getting out-volumed on the feet by Max Griffin. Well, guess what? Court McGee out-volumes his opponent's 13 significant strikes a minute to 9.75. So as this fight goes on, that conditioning is going to become more and more evident as you watch, because Court never gets tired and Ramiz does. So there's a lot of reasons to like Court McGee here. I'm probably going to wind up getting to a bet on him here. It's just he's a little bit older. He's 37 compared to 29 for Brahimaj. You're giving up those 8 years. That is statistically significant, but I don't like everything that I'm seeing in the stats here is telling me to stay away from Ramiz.
Yeah, everything except the age. Like that's the one thing that does scare me is the age of Court McGee.
Yeah, and not only that, if we're looking at that over bet too, I want to mention 30 UFC fights for Court McGee. You want to guess how many have finished inside the distance, for or against?
2.
It's actually 1 on the loss side and 4 on the win side. So only 5 out of 30, right? So that's an 83% chance. Just Court McGee's fights have went the distance 83% of the time. You know what that is? That's minus 500 on the implied probability. That's 83% is a minus 500. So that's why this fight is juiced to the over. It's because Court McGee is in it.
Yeah, but somebody in the chat said, like, if it goes over, you got to feel comfortable about McGee winning because McGee's won decisions plenty of times where Ramiz has only won like one fight out of the first round.
Yeah, and he's never won a decision in his career. It's yet another reason that the stats, if we just look at the stats and say, let's not even worry about what the stylistic possibilities of the fight are, you see a lot of advantages here for Court.
Yeah, for sure. Just double checking here. So the only win that Brahimaj has outside of the first round was in the second round, 2 minutes and 34 seconds in. So yeah, I think he just slightly went over that 1.5 mark just by 4 seconds, I think.
Yeah, he's a killer be killed fighter for the most part, and his grappling game is absolutely nasty. It is so good. When you watch this guy win with his grappling, you always just like shake your head and you're like, God, this guy's an animal on the ground. He really is.
Yep, that's what I was kind of expecting in the Griffin fight, but we didn't get that. But we got it in the Sasha fight, which was awesome. I think I did have a bet on Ramiz Brahimaj in that fight. What's up, Nathan? How you doing? Sorry, I'm late. All good. McGee 10-9 in decision fights wouldn't make me comfortable, but again, Ramiz is what is he? 0-2 in
0-2. Yep. 0-2 in decisions, and never won a fight that went over 2 minutes and 34 seconds of the second round. So Court McGee's a lot more comfortable in that third round than Ramiz ever will be.
Yeah, I mean 0-2, that would not make me feel uncomfortable. We'll keep moving on to the next fight here. Let's see. There it is. Okay. Worst fight on the card. This is the worst fight on the card, I believe. Pickett, Holmes. Not looking forward to this one. But we have Jamie Pickett, 33 years old, 6'2" with an 80-inch reach. Joseph Holmes, 26 years old, 6'4" with an 80-inch reach. So Holmes is going to be younger. He's going to be 7 years younger. He's going to have a 2-inch height advantage. This guy is huge for middleweight. I think they were talking about it on the Contender Series, where there's only like 2 fighters that are 6'4" in the middleweight division, him and Israel Adesanya. But yeah, in the 80-inch reach as well. But Pickett also has an 80-inch reach. We'll take a look at their last few fights. We see that Holmes is 5-0 in his last 5 fights, had a submission win on the Contender Series, and just recently knocked out Jonathan Patty. So he has 5-0 in his last 5 fights. Jamie Pickett 2-3 in his last 5 fights. A decision loss against Soriano on the Contender Series. A knockout win against Jonathan Patty on the Contender Series. A decision loss to Tafon and Chukwu in his debut. A knockout loss against Jordan Wright. And then a decision win against Laureano Staropoli. Yeah, I don't have much to say for this fight. I mean, this is a 1-800 gambler fight if I've seen it. Both guys I'm not very high on. I expected, going into tape, to see a lot of things potentially I liked it with Holmes, and that just was not the case. But he's a pretty decent sized favorite, and I think it might be because people are just trying to, blindly fade Jamie Pickett, and rightfully so. Jamie Pickett's looked horrendous, but you take a look at Joseph Holmes. This guy is very new in MMA. He's very green. He has a decent-sized amateur career, but I think he started MMA in like 2017, 2016, so he's still very new, very green. The striking's not all that there. He's very low volume, does have some power. The wrestling's not amazing. He has a brown belt in BJJ, but both these fighters seem kind of similar. Jamie Pickett, same thing. This guy doesn't throw a ton of volume himself, but when Jamie Pickett does let his hands go, his striking's very good. Jamie Pickett's also a brown belt in BJJ. This just feels like it should be a straight pick 'em. I have no clue what's going to happen. Weezy, do you have any thoughts on this one?
It's tough, man. You mentioned how big of a middleweight Holmes is. He started at welterweight, dude.
Holmes?
Yeah. He has fights at welterweight. It's unbelievable because he's just absolutely gigantic for the weight class. Yeah, he's good everywhere, kind of like Pickett is. Pickett's kind of good everywhere. He's a brown belt. He's durable. He's got some good striking. You see Pickett's knocking out 8 of his 12 wins are by knockout, 1 by submission. So he's got a 75% finish rate. Joseph Holmes got a 100% finish rate. He's subbing guys more than knocking them out, but sometimes he hurts people on the feet first. Then the fight goes to the ground. So Holmes is good everywhere. Pickett's kind of good everywhere. They both are really big, impressive bodies for the weight class. Jamie Pickett's been finished in 3 out of 6 losses. Joseph Holmes has never been finished. We don't have much in stats here, you guys. I mean, we've got 6 fights for Pickett in the UFC, and he's landing 3 significant strikes, absorbing 4.37, showing a horrendous 46% striking defense. That's not good, man. He's getting knocked down 2 times in 6 fights. He's got 1 knockdown in 6 fights. Pickett is 50% of his takedown attempts. That's pretty good. He's getting 1.59 takedowns per 15 minutes and attempting 2.65 submission attempts per 15 minutes. But he's getting out-controlled 17% to 7%. His takedown defense sitting around 65%, not particularly crazy good. God, I kind of see why Holmes is the favorite. He's 7 years younger. He's 2 inches taller. He's a little flashier because he's been fighting the lower brand of competition. So the wins that he's had recently have looked a lot better than Pickett's wins recently. Yeah, dude, I'm struggling here too, man. It's not like Pickett's been fighting world beaters and he hasn't looked great against poor fighters, and he's looked even worse against marginal fighters. So it's going to be a big stay away for me. I can't lay the kind of juice that I have to lay on Holmes, seeing as that there's not a lot that really differentiates their skill sets, in my opinion, unless I'm missing something. But I'm not laying, what is it, minus 150 on Holmes right now, or is it even more than that? No, it's about minus 150. That feels a little bit wide, but I'm not also going to sit here and say that there's value on Jamie Pickett at plus 130 because I'm not betting him at plus 130. It just doesn't feel right to me. So do you got anything here?
No, I agree that the skill sets do seem very similar in terms of the striking. They both have some power, but both tend to be very low volume. Again, both brown belts and BJJ, both solid wrestling. The only thing that really, differentiates themselves, in my opinion, is going to be the level of competition. You take a look at Joseph Holmes. His toughest competition, Weezy, is Jonathan Patty. 6-5 Jonathan, that's the toughest guy he's fought. Other than that, it's very questionable guys. Whereas Jamie Pickett, he hasn't been looking good in a lot of these fights, but at least he's beat a Staropoli. He beat Potty as well.
Yeah,
he lost to Jordan Wright, to Fawn and Chukwu, Ponaheli Soriano. He lost to Charles Bird, who's in the UFC. So at least he's fighting, good guys. Whereas Holmes, His best level of competition guy is Potty. So that's the only thing that really separates themselves, in my opinion. Other than that, it's a very close fight. We see that Holmes, he opened up minus 175. He's now minus 151. Pickett opened up plus 150 and currently plus 131. I feel like I should absolutely be betting Jamie Pickett here, this plus number, but I'm going into 2022 with a new rule, and that new rule is to not bet on Jamie Pickett. So I'm not going to be doing that. So it's going to be a pass for me, Weezy. The over-under is actually set at 1.5 on some books. The over 1.5 is minus 185. The under 1.5 is plus 155. Holmes did come out with an interview, I think it was today, saying that this fight's going to end in the first round. If it is not, it's going to end in the first round and a half. I think it probably does go over. I think this could potentially be a very boring fight. Like a lot of the times these guys just like stand and look at their opponents. So I don't know what's going to happen. I think the line is definitely wide, but do I want to lay anything on Jamie Pickett? Just not really. But I know our boy Prodigy in the chat. He's his boy is Jamie Pickett, and he's going to be very high on Pickett here. And I get it; it makes sense, but I just can't get there from a bet on either side. Weezy, any thoughts on the money line, and then any thoughts on the fight goes or fight doesn't go? This is interesting. The fight doesn't go is minus 145, and that's on 5 dimes.
Yeah, so this is a middleweight fight, and middleweight fights, according to my stats, Brady, which I compiled over the break, are finishing at a 55% rate over a 478 fight sample size. So, when you're getting fight goes to decision or doesn't go to decision at plus money, that's actually pretty good for a middleweight fight, especially when one of the guys is saying this thing's going to end quickly, But, I don't really listen to what people say in interviews because sometimes they're just using those interviews in order to put ideas into their opponent's head that aren't really relevant, But we do hear Bootsy barking in the background, so I think he likes Jamie Pickett. That's the first time that we've heard him bark in the entire debut episode for 2022 in Stat Diggers. So could your dog of the week be Jamie Pickett? Well, my dog Bootsy thinks so.
Weezy, what I'm going to start doing for this year is I'm going to keep track of your dog's record, and we're going to see how damn good Bootsy is. So I'm marking it down. Bootsy likes Jamie Pickett.
He likes Jamie Pickett. God damn it. If the dog outdoes me, the shame that is going to be around my neck like an albatross hanging there is going to be awful. So I got to do better than my dog, man.
I mean, we might need to have Bootsy come on one of these times and give some predictions, huh?
Yeah, we'll see, man. We'll see. He's been chomping at the bit to get on camera here. I don't know if he's ready, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I see a lot of people in the chat saying fade Pickett, good result. I mean, I 100% get it. I want to fade Pickett as well. The problem is, you can't fade a bad fighter with a bad fighter, and that definitely looks like the case to me. So it's a stay away from me. But yeah, I'm not betting this fight, Weezy.
I'm not betting this fight either, man. Like I say, we're gonna ease into this year nice and slow. Get our legs underneath us. Make sure that we don't blow out our groin trying to do a complicated Russian dance early in the party. We gotta ease in, baby, and that means we're not gonna force any spots this week.
100%. I'm not betting on this fight. Don't do it. Okay, moving on to the next fight. We have Joanderson Brito going against Bill Algeo. Another very exciting fight, and there's a lot of these on the card. Joanderson Brito, he is 26 years old, 5'8" with a 72-inch reach. Bill Algeo, he is 32 years old, 6 foot with a 73-inch reach. So Brito is going to be 6 years younger, but Algeo is going to be much bigger. He's going to have a 4-inch height advantage and a 1-inch reach advantage as well. We take a look at the last few fights. Brito is on a nice winning streak. At least in his last 5 fights, he is 5-0 in his last 5 fights. Forget what the exact win streak is. I want to say it's like 7 or 8 fight win streak. But yeah, he's been looking good. Had a contender series win. Kind of a weird fight where he won the first round, very easily, getting takedowns, control time. Second round, same thing. And then there was a really bad eye poke at the very beginning of the third round. Went to like a technical decision, and Brito ended up getting that. But yeah, I thought he looked really good. His cardio checked out. I really like what I see from this guy. Bill Algeo, he is 2-3 in his last 5 fights, made his debut on short notice against Ricardo Lamas. And we were talking about it the other day. We both had bets on Lamas, and we were sweating because we thought Lamas was going to come in here and just dominate this guy, but that was not the case. Bill Algeo, I thought he made a very good account for himself in that fight, but he did lose by decision. Then he goes and beats Spike Carlisle, and then he loses to Ricardo Ramiz. Yeah, I thought originally I'd be betting Joanderson Brito here because, again, I really like this guy's skill set. Very good wrestling. This guy is very physically strong. I believe he's a black belt in BJJ. So the grappling's there, the control time's there. The striking, it's a little iffy, but he does throw with bad intentions. He throws with a ton of power, and I think that does make up with not being as technical as, say, like a Bill Algeo. But Bill Algeo is somebody that, I went back and watched tape on this guy, and his takedown defense on paper is horrendous. It's 55%. He's been taken down 20 times in 4 UFC fights. Like, that's very bad. But when you go and watch this guy's get up game is elite. He's really good at getting back up. He's a black belt himself. And I feel like, Brito, if he wants to get Algeo down, I think he will, he's going to have no problem getting Algeo down. The problem is he going to be able to hold Algeo down, which it's very, very hard to do. And that's kind of where, I'm a little bit iffy on Brito. But again, I really like this guy. But Algeo's get-up game is no joke. And Algeo's striking really did surprise me. This is a guy that he is very hittable, but he does throw a ton of volume. He's very long. He's very tricky on the feet. And I feel like he's going to have some advantages on the feet as long as he doesn't get hurt and all that. But yeah, it's a tough fight because I feel like Brito can mix in takedowns, can maybe get some control time, but I also feel like Algeo is going to be able to work his way back up and then on the feet, maybe have success there. And then also I feel like Algeo is going to have the cardio advantage. So this one is kind of tougher than I originally thought. I'm still going to pick Brito, but I wasn't as confident after, looking at the tape and seeing how elite Algeo's get-up game really is.
This, a lot of people are kind of shitting on this card. But you look at this fight, you look at the Benítez Brown fight is going to be a banger. Borshchev is going to be a banger. Kelleher Kakramanov is going to be a banger. I mean, the main event's fantastic. Royval Bontorin is fantastic. There's some great fights on this card, and this is definitely one of them, dude. Algeo is so much fun to watch. Dude has never been in a boring fight. He brings great conditioning. He's got that fun striking style where his hands are down around his waist, and his strikes come from odd angles. He's got a fantastic counter left hand, which he lands a lot. But like you mentioned, bad striking defense for Algeo, and that's not going to be good, dude. We got for Algeo, I'm on the wrong page here, but I know we've got a 4-fight sample size, and we've got a 40% striking defense over that 4-fight sample size for Bill Algeo. And we know that Joanderson Brito is the kind of guy who explodes into every action that he performs in the cage, whether it's a takedown, whether it's the clinch, whether it's his striking. Everything is thrown with 100% power and force. He can tire himself out because he is so explosive, but Algeo is the kind of guy who the gas tank is almost never ending. The movement is never ending, and he throws a ton of volume. Algeo, like we mentioned, 4 inches taller, 1 inch reach advantage, and he fights out of both stances here. But it's Joanderson Brito. And this is funny. I mean, 26 years old. No fucking way Joanderson Brito is 26 years old. I mean, that guy looks like he's at least 40. Him and RoboCop are probably brothers. Both of these guys claim to be way younger than they really are. There's no way that Joanderson Brito is 26 years old. If that dude is 26 years old, then I can get a job as an undercover cop in a high school trying to bust high school kids for buying weed, because nobody would buy that Uncle Weezy's going to be in there. Hey, do you kids know where I could get some reefer? That's like Joanderson Brito telling the UFC that he's 26 years old. He's not 26. No way. But we're going to get past that here. Both of these guys are good finishers. Algeo a 64% finish rate. Joanderson Brito an 84% finish rate. Brito has been finished in both of his losses, while Bill Algeo has been finished in 2 of his 6 losses, both of them by submission. Algeo throws a ton of volume, 11.82 significant strike attempts per minute that he throws, and his opponents only throw 8.13. So despite the fact that Algeo doesn't really have good striking defense, he's still outstriking his opponents by 1.5 significant strikes per minute. So he's got really good ratios on the feet. Joanderson Brito in one fight showing excellent ratios as well, due to the fact that he controlled the fight on the ground 76% of the time. So Joanderson Brito did show a good takedown game and a good submission defense game. but it seemed like Lopez was happy to be there on his back. Lopez was a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt in his own right. So I don't think he tried to get up with the kind of urgency that Bill Algeo always does try to get up. Algeo will give up his back when he's getting up, but you just don't see people really taking advantage of that, at least not recently in his career. So Algeo's more experienced. Algeo's longer. Algeo throws more volume and has better cardio, but it's Brito that's definitely more explosive here. He's going to be the guy with the power advantage, and he's also going to be the guy that's going to be shooting for more takedowns here, as Algeo has only attempted 7 takedowns in 4 fights, while Brito attempted 4 in 1 fight. And like we mentioned, Algeo's takedown defense is not great, but it's the get-up game that I think it's a good style for him, because he does have that fantastic conditioning. So when you have that fantastic conditioning and you can combine that with the ability to be able to get up 10 seconds after your opponent takes you down, it's a great way to deplete your opponent's gas tank and really take over late in fights and potentially break people. So this fight's got a lot of angles in it, Brady. You know, you've got Brito's power, you've got Algeo's experience, length, and diversity of attack. You've got Brito's wrestling, youth. Well, I mean, the youth on paper, I suppose. But, you know, and these guys have fought a similar level of competition, although you would have to give that level of competition advantage to Algeo over the long term, having fought a stud like Ricardo Lamas and making it a close fight. So, you know, I think I'm going to go with the more experienced, longer, more savvy Algeo here. We'll see if Joanderson Brito can kind of focus that explosiveness here in order to find ways to win minutes and bank rounds against a veteran like Algeo. But I think I'm going to lean Bill Algeo here to get this win. What are you thinking here?
It's such a tough one because I'm kind of up in the air, like on Brito's cardio. Like in some fights, Brito's cardio looks really, really good, but there's some fights where his cardio looks bad. And, you know, yes, he looked really good on the Contender Series against Diego Lopez, but Lopez, what was he doing the whole time? Just trying to throw up submissions. That's not Bill Algeo's game. Algeo's going to make you work. So I'm still going to go with the explosiveness of Brito. I think the takedowns will be there. I'm just saying I think it'll get very sketchy if this fight does get extended, you know, late second round, third round, especially if Algeo is making Brito work, if Algeo is, you know, standing back up when he gets taken down. And also, you mentioned the volume as well, the cardio. I think Algeo could give him problems, but I think Brito's going to be, you know, winning the fight early on. So I'm going to say Brito to win. I was kind of looking, you know, at potentially Brito inside the distance. The only problem with that is Algeo, this guy's very tough, has a very good chin. He's never been knocked out. He has been submitted twice, like you mentioned, but those submission losses came in 2014 against, who was it? It was, Shane Burgos submitted him back in 2014, and then also lost by armbar back in 2012. So he is now a black belt in BJJ. And he has fought some very good grapplers in the last 3 fights, Ricardo Lamas, Spike Carlisle, and Ricardo Ramos, and they weren't able to submit him there. So I guess I'm leaning Brito by decision, but I do think it'll be a very, very close fight, and the odds kind of indicate that. We see that Brito opened up as a minus 110 pick'em. He's now minus 130. Bill Algeo opened up minus 110. He's now plus 110. So the line hasn't moved a ton. And then we see that the fight goes to decision, opened up minus 185. It's now minus 140. The fight doesn't go, opened up plus 145. And the fight doesn't go, is now plus money, which is kind of interesting at plus 110. The over-under set at 2.5, over minus 160. The under is plus 130. Algeo inside the distance plus 335. Brito inside the distance plus 265. Algeo by decision plus 255. And then Brito by decision plus 215. So what are your thoughts on the money line? Brito minus 130, Algeo plus 110. And then what are your thoughts on any props that stick out?
Yeah, I'd be leaning Algeo on the money line, just getting a little bit of plus money there. But, you know, I just don't think I could bet it, because Joanderson Brito is the kind of guy that, you know, you don't want to deny what this guy's really good at. And he's really good at hurting people and just being flat out explosive, whether it's with his grappling, whether it's with his striking. The guy is really trying to finish people, and we see it in that 84% finish rate. So yeah, I could see, you know, because this is another featherweight fight here. Featherweight fights finishing at 43% of the time. So, you know, that means you should be getting plus money for a fight doesn't go to decision bet as long as people, as long as the two fighters involved have lower finish rates or equal finish rates with the division. And that's kind of the case here. So I might even be willing to bet the over because of Algeo's toughness, because of his conditioning. And Joanderson Brito doesn't have any quit in him, really. So I would probably bet the over here, to be honest with you, but it's not something that's screening my name. It's not something that's showing us a ton of value here. So it feels like a fight that I could enjoy without having to gamble on it, because I'm not seeing something really stick out. I am picking Algeo to win, though.
Yep, I get it. I get it. Taking a look at the Tapology predictions, 81% is actually going with Brito. So a lot of love on the Brito side, and the money line doesn't really reflect that. So yeah, should be an interesting fight. What is up? We got Lou in the chat. What is up, Lou? How you doing? Shout out to him. Very smart guy. Like, Lou's probably one of the smartest guys I've ever talked to in my life. I'm always surprised whenever I have a conversation with him. But shout out to him. We'll move on to the next fight. Man, I mean, some fights on this card are very, very good. You got, Brito, Algeo. You have fights like Kelleher, Kakramanov, Borshchev. Benítez Brown's a really good fight. And then we have fights like this, Weezy. Demopoulos, Juarez. Fights like this. Collier, Chase Sherman. This should be interesting for sure. And is this fight's not the main card. This fight's on the main card, Weezy, right?
Yeah, it's a main card fight because well, I don't know why, but it is on the main card. Yeah, I mean, it's Collier Sherman. If you're not fired up for this, man, time to check your pulse, baby.
All right. Anywho, Jake Collier, 33 years old, 6'3", 78-inch reach. Chase Sherman, 32 years old, 6'4", then he's 78-inch reach. Sherman, 1 year younger, and Sherman's going to have a 1-inch height advantage. Collier, he is 2-3 in his last 5 fights. In terms of heavyweight, he is 1-2. Had a knockout loss to Tom Aspinall after a long layoff. Lost in, I think, like 60 seconds or less in that fight. Comes back, has a nice win over Jean Vellante, and then loses a very close split decision against Carlos Felipe. A lot of people thought that Collier did get that done. Chase Sherman, on the other hand, he's 3-2 in his last 5 fights. He did go out of the UFC for a little bit, but came back. I believe it was against Ike Villanueva. Got a nice knockout win, and since then, he had a loss to Andrei Arlovsky by decision, and then a loss by decision against Parker Porter. Yeah, this is a big mess of a fight. You have Chase Sherman, who is the more natural heavyweight. He's training at a very good camp in Sanford MMA these days. He's going to have a height advantage. He's going to have the power advantage. But Chase Sherman, this guy has some of the worst striking defense I've ever seen in my life. And I think that Collier, with that volume that he does bring to the heavyweight division, can really have a lot of success here. The only thing I don't like about Collier is going to be the fact that he slows down a lot as the fight goes on, and Sherman does as well, but Collier does slow down a lot, and he doesn't really seem like he has a lot of pop on his punches in terms of, being a heavyweight. I think Sherman is the much harder hitter. I think Sherman is also the tougher fighter as well, where I do question the chin of Jake Collier, who has been knocked out at heavyweight, and he's actually been knocked out a few times at middleweight as well. So it's a tough fight. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on this one, Weezy.
Yeah, I'm sure you're really curious, man. So we got, the experience numbers are fairly similar, but when we look deeper into the experience numbers, you're going to see that Chase Sherman has been way more active. He fights over 3 times a year, while Jake Collier fights less than 1.5 times a year. So Sherman much more active here. Sherman one more UFC level fight and a few more minutes in the UFC cage. The thing that we got to look at here, though, it's Chase Sherman's 93% finish rate as a pro. 14 of 15 of his wins coming by knockout. So the guy really does finish when he wins. And when Jake Collier loses in his 6 professional losses, 3 of them have come by knockout. 1 of them has come by submission. Another thing that I want to look at here when I looked at this fight is we can say with relative certainty that this fight should be taking place on the feet at least 90% of the time. Jake Collier in 9 UFC fights has attempted 14 takedowns, and he's only gotten 3 of them. So he doesn't get a lot of control time. He's not an accurate wrestler. He's the one that shoots takedowns, though, because Chase Sherman has never even shot 1 takedown in the UFC, and that's in 10 UFC level fights. So we know Chase Sherman ain't shooting a takedown. Jake Collier might, but Chase Sherman has shown in 10 UFC fights 82% takedown defense. So I think that it's very important for everyone that's listening to understand that when you break down this fight, you really kind of have to break it down from a striking perspective. And so let's look into these striking numbers here. Jake Collier throws a lot more volume than his opponents. He throws 13 significant strikes per minute, while his opponents throw only 9.45. Now, Chase Sherman throws a ton of volume too, and he's a heavyweight. You know, Jake Collier, half of his career in the UFC has been at a middleweight and a light heavyweight, while Sherman, as a heavyweight, is throwing 13.72 significant strike attempts per minute. Think about that. We just looked back a while ago at the middleweight king of, the lightweight king of the welterweight volume king. Court McGee throws 13 significant strike attempts per minute. Both of these guys, Collier and Sherman, throw more volume than Court McGee does. Very impressive. And Collier out volumes his opponents, while Sherman throws about the same amount of volume. Sherman just a little bit more accurate. It's actually Jake Collier who lands knockdowns on a better aggregate rate than Sherman does. It's Collier who actually has the power advantage, which is crazy. And both of these guys haven't been knocked down much, less than 0.5% in their UFC careers, combining 19 fights. So it looks like it should be close on the feet. Like Collier will probably have the volume advantage. Chase Sherman probably will have the power advantage because he's the more natural heavyweight. When we look at the strength of schedule numbers, it slightly favors Sherman, as his ratio is 0.95 to 0.81 for Collier, and he's fought the more experienced competition with 3 more fights on the aggregate. The wins are pathetic for both of them. They both don't beat guys with winning records. As a matter of fact, the ratio of win to losses for the guys that Chase Sherman has beaten in the UFC is 0.29. I think it might, unless it's 0, I don't think there's anybody that's got a ratio lower than that. So very unimpressive wins for Chase Sherman. And then the losses are better for Sherman. So Sherman's got the strength of schedule advantage. Chase Sherman has a little bit of a size advantage here. He has an experience advantage here. He's been busier. He's the better finisher. Collier is probably the better grappler, but I don't think he's going to be able to get this fight to the ground. And if he does, I just see Sherman getting right back up, as Sherman's fights have been taking place at range 90% of the time. And despite the fact his opponents have shot 17 takedowns against him in 10 fights, they've only controlled him less than 7% of his UFC career. So give me some insight, Brady. You watched all the tape on these guys. I know you started in December when you heard that Collier Sherman was happening. You already started watching tape. What did you see on the fight from these guys on the feet? You know, who's going to win this one in the striking battle? Because that's going to tell us who's going to win the fight of the night, maybe the fight of the year for 2022.
Yeah, well, I feel like Collier is going to be winning the minutes because, again, like Sherman is one of the biggest punching bags I've ever seen in my life. Has that Priscilla Cachoeira striking defense. So I feel like Collier is going to have no problem teeing off on him. It's just, Sherman has that X factor, which is going to be that power. And again, Collier has been knocked out 3 times in his career. So he's been knocked out 3 times out of his 6 losses. So half his losses, he's getting knocked out. And Chase Sherman has a 93% knockout rate, tons of power. It's, this is how I look at it. If you think that Collier wins, I think it's by decision. Collier by decision, that's not great. Only plus 165 they're giving you. But I think if this does go decision, I think Collier wins. I think if it does finish, I think it's Chase Sherman. And this line really jumped out to me because you have, pretty much a pick'em fight. And you have Chase Sherman, who has a 93% finish rate, all by knockout. And you have Jake Collier, who, I do question his durability, his cardio, and he has been finished by knockout in half his losses. Sherman inside the distance is plus 275. That seems way off to me. But in terms of the money line, Collier is a slight favorite, minus 125. Sherman plus 105. I get it. I kind of get it because I think Collier is going to be winning the minutes. But my prediction, I think Chase Sherman's going to knock out Jake Collier early. And I'm going to be looking at Sherman either by KO or inside the distance, like plus 275. Just seems off to me. And if the KO props around like plus 300, I don't mind a little sprinkle on that. The over 2.5 rounds is minus 175. If you like Collier, you probably like that over 2.5 rounds. The under 2.5 rounds is plus 145. If you like Sherman, you probably like the under 2.5 rounds. Fight goes to decision is minus 150, and fight doesn't go to decision is plus 120. And Weezy, you have the stats in terms of the finishing between the weight divisions. Plus 120 for a heavyweight fight to finish, like that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, heavyweight fights over since 2013 in a 321 fight sample size have finished 65% of the time. So that means if your betting fight doesn't go to decision, you should be getting like a minus 200 200 line. And oh my God, Mel and JS saying, yeah, I heard that too, dude. There's a lot of hype on Collier and Sherman. I mean, you can't avoid it with a guy like Sherman. When you've got a 3-7 UFC record, you're going to have some eyes on you. Those, and it's the same thing with Collier. He looks like the before picture for a Weight Watchers ad when you used to see him when he first came into the UFC. But there's a lot of hype on this fight. But yeah, 65% finish rate for heavyweight fights over the last 8 years. So whenever you're getting, what's the over 2.5, did you say?
The over 2.5 rounds is minus 175.
Okay. Yeah, that's not bad. That's not bad at all. I mean, this one, I'm not betting this fight, dude. We joked around a lot. I'm not, friends don't let friends bet on Sherman and this other guy, man. I can't do it, dude.
Definitely not. I mean, the only thing I'd look at it, if Sherman KO is like plus 300, I think that's, worth a shot. It's a close fight. Could go either way, and Sherman is a finisher.
That's a great pick out, though, because like you say, 93% finish rate in Chase Sherman's 15 wins and a 50% by finish rate KO in Collier's 6 losses. So if Sherman does win this fight, there's a very high probability he finishes it inside the distance. So to get plus 300 for a guy that's about to pick him would be really good for the KO line.
Yeah, but other than that, I'm staying far away from this fight.
Yeah, me too, man. Me too. That would be I might sprinkle it, but even then, I probably think that you should call the orderlies on me.
Definitely. All right, we'll keep moving on. I cannot believe that's on the main card. Weird. I feel like they could have put something else on there, but it is what it is. Move on to the next fight. We have Brandon Royval going against Rogério Bontorin. This fight is one of the most exciting fights on the card. We have Royval, who is 29 years old, 5'9" with a 68-inch reach. Bontorin, he is 29 years old, 5'5" with a 67-inch reach. Royval is going to have a 4-inch height advantage and also a 1-inch reach advantage. We'll take a look at the last few fights. Royval did make his debut against Tim Elliott, got a very nice submission win after Elliott pushed a really heavy wrestling pace and kind of gassed out in that second round, got submitted by Royval, and then he goes out there and submits Kaikar France in one of the most exciting fights of the year. And then he loses by knockout, kind of an injury to his shoulder, really, by Brandon Moreno, the champ, and then loses by submission against Alexander Pantoja, one of the most underrated fighters, in my opinion, in the division. So he has 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Rogério Bontorin, he is 3-2 as well. He had a split decision win against Bibliatov. He had a knockout win against Paiva. It was a cut stoppage win, and then he lost by decision against Ray Borg, where Borg took him down like 10 times in that fight. And then he loses by knockout against Kaikar France in a fight he was looking really good up until he got knocked out late first round. And then it wins a fight against Matt Danger Schnell by decision in a fight where Schnell did not look like himself. Schnell went out there and there was no danger the entire fight. But yeah, Bontorin 3-2 in his last 5 fights. So yeah, both these guys, really exciting fighters. Both these guys, I believe, black belts in BJJ. Both guys very dangerous as well. Weezy, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, potential fight of the night once again. Has Royval ever been in a boring fight ever in his life? And I mean, you could say the same for Bontorin, other than Borg blanketing him for 3 rounds. Bontorin's always in bangers too. So fantastic fighters here. Both of these guys really explosive. Both of these guys really good everywhere. It's going to be the same age for both of these guys, but it's going to be Royval that's 4 inches taller and an inch of reach advantage, and he's a southpaw. So you like that. Bontorin, 3 more fights and 15 more minutes in the pro cage, while Brandon Royval has about 6 months more experience as a pro. And Bontorin, 2 more UFC level fights, about 40 more minutes in the UFC cage. Brandon Royval with a 92% finish rate as a flyweight in his 12 wins, 11 of 12 wins coming inside the distance. And then Bontorin with an 83% finish rate which I believe is something like it would be 14 of his 17 wins coming inside the distance. So 14 plus 11 is 25 of 29 wins for these guys. And they're flyweights that have come inside the distance. Now, flyweight fights finish about 43% of the time as well. Or no, I'm sorry, they actually finish a little bit more than that. No, 44%. Anyway, okay. These guys finish at a much, much, much higher rate than the flyweight division does as a whole. They're both so explosive. And we know that Royval's conditioning is absolutely fantastic. So I think the longer this fight goes on, we're going to see Royval really get an advantage. But this could be one of the best first rounds of the year right here, as both of these guys really kind of go out, all balls out, and throw the kitchen sink at their opponents and hope for the best here. So Royval in his 4 UFC fights is outlanding his opponents by about a half strike, showing 41% striking accuracy. While that's low, he's landed 2 knockdowns, though, in 4 fights. So the guy is throwing with a lot of power and averaging over 1 knockdown per 15 minutes. 46% striking defense is not good for Brandon Royval, but Bontorin's is actually even worse. Both of these guys have been knocked down. Royval once in 77 significant strikes, and Bontorin once in 213 significant strikes absorbed. Bontorin is getting outstruck by his opponents, so he has at a 0.6 significant strike deficit, while Royval's at a +5 advantage over his opponents. So it looks like Royval has the advantage on the feet if we're just looking at the numbers. But when I also look at the tape, I really like what I see out of Royval on the feet. It seems like he's more comfortable in the grappling positions and actively chases those grappling positions, but he's not the kind of guy that's at a deficit when it's not at the grappling range. The guy's landing, he throws straight strikes, he throws with power, he throws with diversity, he uses all of his weapons. So I really like Brandon Royval on the feet here, and I think I like him even more on the ground, even though Bontorin's a black belt, and he's a legitimate ground player. Boy, what I've seen out of Royval on the ground is just a very difficult guy to deal with, and he pushes a pace that exhausts his opponents. So the fact that Royval has only been finished once in his career in 18 fights by submission leads me to believe that the longer that this one goes on, we're going to see Brandon Royval really start to own the grappling exchanges after the first round, and especially the striking exchanges. Royval 100% on his takedown attempts, but there's only been 2 of them. But Royval's getting out-controlled by his opponents, 44% to 14%. But what I think's interesting about that is that Royval's takedown defense is only 52%. It doesn't look like he cares if his opponents take him down, because he's so active from his back, because he's throwing up 1.74 submission attempts per 15 minutes. He's really doing a great job of being active there. So you see a guy like Royval, he's allowing 5.22 takedowns per 15 minutes, and Bontorin is allowing 3.36 takedowns per 15 minutes. There's a high probability that with the amount of takedowns that both these guys shoot and both these guys' grappling pedigrees, that a good percentage of this fight is going to take place on the ground. So whichever one of these guys wins minutes on the ground, I think is going to win the most minutes of the fight. I just see it taking place on the ground way more than half of the fight. When we look at the strength of schedule here, predictably, it's going to go to Royval. Not only has Royval beaten Kai Kara-France while Bontorin lost to him in the first round, he's fought guys like Pantoja and Moreno as well. So he's definitely fought the better brand of competition here, and he's beaten the better brand of competition, beating guys like France and Tim Elliott, while the wins for Bontorin are over Bibulatov, Paiva, and Danger Schnell. So I'm giving Royval a pretty good advantage everywhere in this fight. I like him with the strength of schedule. I think his striking is better than Bontorin's. I think his gas tank is better than Bontorin's. He's bigger, and he's going to have a 1-inch reach advantage, and he's a southpaw, which is difficult for a lot of fighters to deal with. So I'm leaning Royval here. What are you thinking about this one?
Yeah, so it's very interesting. So, I was like you, I was really impressed with the striking of Brandon Royval. I mean, look at it this way, right? Like Tim Elliott comes in here and he just goes after takedowns right away. He does not want to strike with Royval. And then the Kaikar France fight, it was France who's not a grappler, shot in for a takedown against Royval, which that's weird, right? And ends up getting submitted because of it. Brandon Moreno takes him down twice. And then Alexander Pantoja does not want to strike with Brandon Royval. So, going back and looking at Royval, I forgot like how good this guy's striking is, and he's like very tricky on the feet. He's very long, but he's very dangerous. Great knees, great elbows. He mixes it up really well. So yeah, on the feet, for me, it's Royval by a decent margin. The volume is there, and I think what's interesting is Royval throws a ton of volume, is very dangerous. Bontorin is very dangerous as well. It's just Bontorin, he does not throw a ton of volume, and I think the biggest factor in this fight for me is going to be the cardio. We have Bontorin, who really struggles with the weight cut. This is a guy that missed weight up a weight class against a Matt Schnell in his last fight. He missed weight at 135. So I kind of want to see how Bontorin looks on the scales here. But, how's the weight cut going to affect Bontorin's cardio? Because we have seen Bontorin slow down a little bit in the past. And Royval is a guy that you do not want to slow down against. Tim Elliott slowed down against him bad. Alexander Pantoja looked like he was on his way to slowing down, ends up getting a sub. But, Royval, I just like a lot of things about him in this fight. The tail of the tape, he's going to have a big height advantage of 4 inches. That's huge. He's going to have a reach advantage in terms of the striking. I like the volume. I like how dangerous he is. We talk about the bad striking defense, 46%, but guess what? Bontorin, 43%. And then we touch on the grappling. So, yeah, the takedown defense is not good, but his ground game is legit. He got submitted against Pantoja. That is true, but Pantoja is a legit black belt. He got caught. It happens. Bontorin, very solid wrestler. He's very strong. I think Bontorin could take down Royval. I think he could even, win minutes on the ground. It's just Royval does a very good job, kind of like a Bill Algeo, scrambling back up to his feet, getting reversals, sweeps. He really makes his opponent work, and I think he's going to make Bontorin work here in this fight. So, yeah, there's a lot of things to like about Brandon Royval. We take a look at the odds here, and we see that Royval opened up -110 pick'em. He's now -155. Bontorin opened up a -110 pick'em. He is now +135. The over-under is set at 2.5 rounds. The over 2.5 rounds is +130. Under 2.5 rounds is -160. The fight goes to decision is +165. The fight doesn't go to decision is -205. And I think what is very interesting is, people were really high on Royval, not only after the Elliott fight, but after the France fight. Like, people were really high on him. This guy gained a ton of hype. Like, he was the next big thing. And now he loses to the champ and Brandon Moreno and a very underrated Alexander Pantoja. And now all of a sudden, people are kind of counting him out. I think that's just so funny how, people kind of switch up. And I feel like if, he either, beat Pantoja, or if those fights didn't happen, I feel like he'd be a much bigger favorite here, but I feel like he lost a little bit of hype, with those two losses. Then it happens. Fighters lose hype. They gain hype, they lose it. And I think he had a lot of hype after that France fight. I think he lost it after losing to two very good fighters. So, yeah, I like Royval here. I'm kind of, sitting back, seeing where the line goes. The line's, not really moving a ton. I see Royval on some books. He's, as high as like -177, and the lowest you can get him is like -155. Any thoughts on the money line yourself, and then any thoughts on any props?
Yeah, I kind of like the Royval money line here. I'm not jazzed to lay juice on him, but you really nailed it. You got a guy coming in here in his UFC debut, beating Tim Elliott in the second round, and then he beats Kaikar France, who now is, he's in the conversation for a title shot right now at Flyweight. Then he loses via injury to Brandon Moreno, who is the champion. And then he loses via submission to Pantoja, a guy who has beaten the champion twice. Pantoja has beaten Brandon Moreno not once, but twice. Once in the UFC and once in the Ultimate Fighter House. So, you nailed it. Like if this was after the Kaikar France fight for both of these guys, for instance, if Royval's coming off a win over Kara France and Bontorin's coming off that loss to Kaikar France, you're looking at like Royval maybe -300 here, honestly. So I think that this is an area where you're getting some value because Brandon Royval lost to two of the top 3 flyweights right now, not named Davison Figueiredo. But this guy he's got the conditioning. He's got the striking. He's got a super aggressive Brazilian jiu-jitsu game from his back, and he's even better on top. And Bontorin has shown problems with that weight cut. Like you said, he missed weight at 135. How is and then, not only that, he's probably going to be the one having the tougher weight cut, and he's going to be smaller. So, yeah, there's a lot of things lining up against Bontorin here. I think the line is fair. I could see this fight finishing inside the distance. Both these guys are such fantastic finishers for the division, but you want to be careful laying too much juice on a fight doesn't go when, fights don't go the decision only 43% of the time in the flyweight division, and you're paying a line that says it probably won't go 60% of the time. You got to be careful giving up that kind of an edge, but at the same time, we're seeing ridiculously high finish rates for both of these guys. 83% for Bontorin, 92% for Royval. So, I see why people are betting that under. It makes sense. Both of these guys are finishers.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense for sure. But yeah, minus 200 for a 125-pound fight. I just don't think I'm going to get there. But yeah, I am pretty tempted on Royval. I don't think I'm going to bet him inside the distance. It's only like plus 125. I think I might look at him straight, but I'm going to be patient like I am for a lot of spots on this card, see where that line does go, hoping somebody does come in on Bontorin.
Yeah, we'll see, man. It's a very, very interesting fight, but I think that you're getting a little bit of a discount on Royval because he's lost to two of the top 3 flyweights in his last 2 fights.
Yeah, and if he loses this fight, it's going to be a 3-fight losing streak, and that's not good. I mean, I would be shocked if they cut somebody like Royval, but 3-fight losing streak would not be a good look.
It wouldn't be, but Royval's still only 29 years old, and Bontorin's still only 29 years old. So, whoever wins this fight is going to have a ton of momentum, I think, because this is a high-level matchup here. I think both these guys are top 10 right now, aren't they?
Not completely sure, but they should be.
Royval should be for sure, in my opinion.
Yes, I totally agree. All right. So, yeah, good fight there. Like you said, potentially could be fight of the night. So we're going from potentially fight of the night to another one of these fights where I'm like, I really could care less. We have Katlyn Chookagian, Jennifer Maia, the rematch. We have Chookagian, 33 years old, 5'9" with a 68-inch reach. Jennifer Maia, 33 years old, 5'4" with a 64-inch reach. So massive tail to tape advantage for Chookagian. So they're the same age. I believe Katlyn Chookagian just recently turned 33 back in late December. She's going to have a 5-inch height advantage, and then she's going to have a 4-inch reach advantage. I think those are all something to definitely take into account. We take a look at the last couple of fights. Katlyn Chookagian, she is 3-2 in her last 5 fights. A knockout loss to Valentina Shevchenko, no shame in that. A decision win against Antonina Shevchenko. A knockout loss against Jessica Andrade, no shame in that. A decision win against Calvillo and Araujo. As far as Jennifer Maia, she is 3-2 in her last 5 fights as well. A decision win against Roxanne Modafferi, a decision loss against Katlyn Chookagian, and a submission win against Joanne Calderwood, and a decision loss to Valentina Shevchenko, and then a decision win against Jessica Ai. So this is a fight where, first of all, we saw the fight, we saw how it played out, and I know not all fights play out the same, but I kind of feel like this one does. When you take a look at Jennifer Maia, this is one of the most frustrating fighters for me because she has a very good ground game. It's really good, but you take a look at it, and I'm sure you're going to touch on it a lot, Weezy. She has 7 UFC fights. She's been in the cage for 104 minutes, and she has attempted 4 takedowns. And, that's kind of what happened in the Chookagian fight. She went out there and she did take down Chookagian. That was one of her 2 takedowns. One was against Chookagian. The other was against Valentina. But, in a lot of these Maia fights, I have found myself in the past saying, if she goes to her wrestling, she could have a decent advantage. And I feel that way in this fight. If Jennifer Maia goes to her wrestling, gets the fight down to the mat, I feel like she can have a good advantage. The problem is that's not Jennifer Maia's game. She doesn't even attempt to do so. So I kind of feel like it's going to play out how their last fight did. If Jennifer Maia comes in here with a smart game plan for the first time in her entire career, so be it. But how I kind of see the fight is I think Jennifer Maia is going to strike with Katlyn Chookagian. I think they're both going to not land anything, but I think Katlyn Chookagian is going to make those sounds. So it looks like to the judges who are blind, they can hear the noises and they're going to score the fight for Chookagian. Chookagian has a 35% accuracy. It's horrible, and it's probably even worse. And Jennifer Maia has a 38% accuracy. Both these fighters are not going to land one strike in this fight, but Chookagian is going to make those sounds. And I think those sounds, Weezy, are going to win her another decision. So what are your thoughts on this one? Do you think Jennifer Maia is going to come in here and go for takedowns? I just can't, count on her to do that.
Yeah, like we've talked about this before, like one of the laziest things that you can do when you're capping MMA fights, when you get a rematch, is to say, oh, well, it went this way the first time, so it's going to go that way the second time. Because it doesn't usually happen that way. But when you have a situation where you've seen Katlyn Chookagian and Jennifer Maia kind of fight the exact same way in every single fight. Chookagian has attempted 20 takedowns in 13 fights, but she's only gotten 3. 3 takedowns in 13 fights. And then Jennifer Maia, 2 takedowns in 7 fights. So in 20 combined fights, these ladies have combined for 5 takedowns. So if you just want to go on that statistic, you're going to say that there's a 25% chance in this fight that one of these ladies gets a takedown, a 25% chance. And then from there, we look at control time numbers, and they're not big on either side. Chookagian, 22% overall, 42% overall for Jennifer Maia. But Jennifer Maia has shot 4 takedowns, and her opponents have shot 26. So, her opponents are trying to take her down, and they're just not, they're being fairly successful. And she's giving up a lot of control time on the takedowns that she does allow, because we do see that 104 minutes in the UFC cage, about 26 minutes of control time that she's allowed on only 12 takedowns. So that's about, 2 minutes of control time that she's allowing per takedown. So that's not good for Jennifer Maia. That's going to be a good way for her to lose minutes on the ground. But when you're worried about, when you look at Katlyn Chookagian getting her offensive takedown attempts at a 15% clip, you have to figure that this fight's going to take place on the feet, just like it did the last time. So, yeah, it feels like Maia, the striking metrics for Maia are just a little bit behind everywhere. Chookagian showing just a little bit more power. Chookagian throws more volume. Chookagian has better striking defense. Jennifer Maia has better striking accuracy, but both of these ladies couldn't hit water if they fell out of a boat, so that really doesn't matter. They're not knocking anybody down. We have 1 knockdown combined in 1,200 significant strikes landed between the two of them. So, yeah, it's going to be a stand-up battle, and whoever makes the better mouth sounds will probably win the decision. So, fight goes to decision is probably even a parlay piece for this one, in my opinion. Where is the fight goes to decision? Like minus 250, minus 300 for this fight?
On Caesars, which I don't have a Caesars account, it's minus 275, and then on 5 dimes it's minus 310.
Yeah, that makes sense. That feels about right. This fight should go to decision 75 to 80% of the time. The finishing power of these ladies, not really UFC level. 9 wins for Chookagian, 4 wins for Maia. How many finishes? 1 out of 13 in their wins. And in their losses in the UFC, and there's 7 of them, it looks like 2 of them have finished inside the distance, and that was Chookagian getting knocked out by Andrade and somebody named Valentina Shevchenko, who I don't think anybody's ever heard of. So, yeah, it's 1-800-GAMBLER. I'm not touching it, dude. I'm just not going there. I'm not laying juice on Katlyn Chookagian because the fights that she's won, I'm not even sure that she won them. So, I mean, like, are we worried about that? Are the judges going to get this one right? It probably goes to decision. If you're looking to parlay a couple things, over 2.5 for fight goes is a decent parlay piece. But other than that, man, it's all pretty close, and I'm not touching it.
Yeah, I think a big mistake people might make this week in their analysis is going to be this, and this has gotten me a lot, especially the last year. If Jennifer Maia comes in here with a smart game plan and gets this fight down to the mat early and often, I think she wins the fight pretty convincingly. We talked about it in the Brown fight against Chavez. We talked about it in another fight as well. You can't trust these fighters with bad fight IQ to fight smart. And we have a good enough sample size where I feel comfortable of saying that Jennifer Maia is not going to come in here and go for multiple takedowns, right? 4 takedowns in 104 minutes in the cage, right? Is that right?
Yeah, 4 takedown attempts in 104 minutes, only 2 successful takedowns. But what's interesting is she's got about 18 minutes of control time on only 2 takedowns. So obviously you can't, that's mathematically impossible. So there must be a ton of cage control time in there, because you can only get 5 minutes of control time off of a takedown. And that's if you get the takedown with 0 seconds into the round. So she's clearly done a good job of, when she gets the takedowns, getting some control and controlling her opponents on the cage. Because you look at Maia, and what I like to talk about sometimes is efficiency, where you look at Maia's attempted 4 takedowns, but her opponents have attempted 26. So for every 1 takedown attempt Maia has, her opponents have almost 7. So, you would like to see Maia's opponents out controlling her at a pretty good ratio, but it's not even 2-1. So Maia's very efficient on the ground. Chookagian is not particularly, she's tried 20, she's had 38 tried against her, but she's not efficient because she's got 52% takedown defense, but only 15% takedown accuracy. She's getting out controlled at a little over a 2-1 ratio. So yeah, it just feels like a really close fight. And Jennifer Maia fights and Katlyn Chookagian fights in particular are always very close. You usually don't see these ladies winning dominantly, except for in the Chookagian over Shevchenko's sister. Other than that, they're all close fights, man.
Yeah, and this line, and I've just talked about how much I do kind of like Chookagian in this fight, and not liking Maia here, but this line, even I could admit that this line's kind of nuts. Katlyn Chookagian opened up -145. She's now -172, and money's continuing to come in on her. Jennifer Maia is opened up +125. She's currently +147, and that line scares me in a lot of ways, because I do think Chookagian's going to be winning the striking exchanges, but I don't think she's going to be, like dominantly winning the striking exchanges. And I think it's going to be close on the feet. And then if Jennifer Maia, for some reason, decided, she's going to fight smart for the first time in her career, that +147 could look like some really good value. But again, I can't count on her to do that. So I'm going to pick Chookagian to win, but there's no way I'm -172 on Chookagian in a fight like this is nuts to me.
It is. And I'm not going to touch it. And like you say, it's hard to justify the +140 for Maia if you're thinking to yourself, okay, I don't really see her winning on the feet. So then you have to kind of say to yourself, well, if I'm getting that +140, I think maybe she can win on the ground. Well, 4 takedown attempts in 7 fights. So it's hard. It's really hard to get to either of these ladies on a bet.
Yeah, it's going to be a pass for me for the most part. The over 2.5 -350. Fight goes to decision -310. I forget who said it in the chat, but somebody said on Bovada the fight goes to decision is -285. Yeah, I think it goes the distance. And then Maia inside the distance +500, Chookagian +490. I guess this is the only spot I'd be interested in. It would be Chookagian by decision, but even that, it's starting to get bet down to -117. I see on Caesar that's now -130. If I can get Chookagian at plus money, sure, by decision, sure. But if not, I think I'm just fine with passing here.
Yeah, me too, man. Like I say, first card of the year. Let's start slow. Let's get lathered up. Let's ease into 2022.
Yeah, don't lay chalk like this on Chookagian. I think she wins, but my goodness, it's going to be closer than the line indicates, I think.
Yeah, I think it is. And all those fights are close, man. The Maia fights are close. The Chookagian fights are close. So, yeah, I'm not touching it, dude.
No, as you should not. But I do want to take the time to say, thank you all so much for hanging out. The first show of 2022. We hope to keep Stat Diggers growing. Uncle Weezy's working on some things behind the scenes. I'm going to work on some things behind the scenes to improve the show. So excited for all of that. If you guys can please leave a like, that is always much, much appreciated. One like goes a long way. And also subscribe here to Pub Sports Radio. Me, Weezy, Luke, and MMA Monk will be back here on Pub Sports Radio on Wednesday with the very first DraftKings show of the year. And we have some new things for that show as well. It's going to be very fun as well. Another announcement, we're going to be doing a main event deep dive, me and Weezy, on my channel, DFS by the Numbers on YouTube at 5:15 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow. So be sure to check that out. We'll go really deep into it, and then we'll also talk it from a betting perspective and get your guys' thoughts in the chat as well. With all that out of the way, we have the main event here, Weezy, Calvin Kattar Giga Chikadze. And I believe Chikadze, like I was talking about earlier, I think he's the biggest favorite on the entire card. And we'll see if we can find out why. We have Calvin Kattar. He's 33 years old, 5'11" with a 72-inch reach. Giga Chikadze, he is 33 years old, 6 foot with a 74-inch reach. So same age. Giga is going to have a 1-inch height advantage and also a 2-inch reach advantage. So we'll go through the last couple fights. So Chikadze, he is 5-0 in his last 5 fights. And I do want to dig into his career a little bit deeper as we go on. But in his last 5 fights, he has a decision win against Erwin Rivera, a decision win against Omar Morales, and then 3 knockout wins in a row. Jamie Simmons knockout, Cub Swanson knockout, and then Edson Barbosa knockout. So Giga's been on a very good run. He lost his fight on the Contender Series against Austin Springer, got submitted in the 3rd round. But since then, he's went on a very nice streak, winning every single fight in the UFC. And we are seeing like massive improvements in terms of, the game of Chikadze. We're seeing improvements in, how dangerous he is. We're seeing improvements in his cardio. His cardio has looked very shaky in the past, but his cardio looked, better in the Barbosa fight. It looked better in the Morales fight. So he is getting better. The takedown defense is getting much better. The grappling is getting much better. So this guy's making a lot of the necessary improvements you'd like to see out of a very good kickboxer in Chikadze. As far as Calvin Kattar, he is 3-2 in his last 5 fights, had a knockout win against Ricardo Lamas, had a decision loss against Zabit, a knockout win against Jeremy Stevens, a decision win against Dan Ige, and then just recently a decision loss. I think it was the very first card of the year last year against Max Holloway, where he got absolutely dominated. So, yeah, it's an interesting fight, Weezy. What do you think about this one here?
Yeah, it's going to be a great striking battle here. Chikadze a little bit bigger 2-inch reach advantage. It's going to be Kattar with the experience advantage, having twice as many minutes in the pro cage, 11 more professional fights, and 8 more years as a pro mixed martial artist. And that's key, mixed martial artist, because obviously Chikadze with a very, very decorated kickboxing career prior to becoming a mixed martial artist. And so in his 6-year career for Chikadze, he's got 16 fights and 14 wins, only 2 losses. So really a really credible record here. And he's got just 1 less UFC level fight than Calvin Kattar and only about 30 less minutes in the cage than Kattar. So Giga, while being less experienced here, I think, he's not less experienced as a fighter. You know what I'm saying? He's less experienced as a mixed martial artist, but Calvin Kattar is not a takedown artist. Calvin Kattar is averaging 1.84% control time. So the fact that Giga doesn't have as much mixed martial arts experience won't be playing in here, because this is likely to be a stand-up battle, which is where, Giga does his best work, as well as where Calvin does his best work. So let's get into these striking numbers here. But first, 71% finish rate for Chikadze, 59% finish rate for Kattar. Both of these guys finish less than 10% of their wins by submission. Their wins come by knockout. And in the 7 combined losses for these guys, only 2 have come inside the distance. And they're both by submission. Neither one of these guys are submission artists. So Kattar 1 loss by submission, Chikadze 1 loss by submission. But we don't really have to worry about that here. So will this be the first time that either Giga or Calvin gets knocked out as a pro? If you don't think that happens, then you probably think that this fight's going to go the distance, because I don't see Cal getting a sub and I don't see Giga getting a sub. And neither one of these guys are particularly great takedown artists. So let's really just kind of look at these striking numbers, Brady. Yep. Calvin Kattar with an absolutely disgusting significant strike differential here. He allows 3.09 more significant strikes to land against him than what he lands against his opponents. He lands 5.07 per minute and absorbs 8.16. While Giga is landing 3.76 and absorbing only 2.69. So much more efficient striker is Giga. Giga has shown more power in his 8 UFC fights. He's landed 6 knockdowns. Very impressive. While Calvin Kattar has landed 4 knockdowns in 9 fights. So it's Giga who's landing about twice as many knockdowns per 15 minutes as Calvin Kattar. Neither one of these dudes in 17 UFC fights combined has ever been knocked down. Very interesting. It's Kattar who's showing a 50% striking defense, while Giga shows a 61% striking defense. Kattar's opponents are out-voluming him by a significant amount, about 4 significant strike attempts per minute, while Giga out-volumes his opponents. So, Calvin is at a deficiency in a lot of areas here. Striking accuracy, power, knockdowns per 15 minutes, volume thrown over their opponents, striking defense. All the metrics basically are saying Giga Chikadze is much better on the feet here. And then we just throw in the fact that Calvin Kattar is somebody who usually just uses his hands, right, Brady? He's a boxer first. And we got Giga's a kickboxer. So he throws weapons that have a longer range. Your leg reach is longer than your arm reach. So when you add in the diversity of attacks that Giga has compared to Calvin, you add that up with a 2-inch reach advantage, more kickboxing experience, more diversity of weapons. I do see Giga having a lot of advantages here, and Calvin Kattar not having enough of an offensive grappling attack to be able to count on him being able to win minutes on the ground should he not like how it's going on the feet. And then if we look at the strength of schedule numbers, this is one area where we will see an advantage for Calvin Kattar. He's got a 1.78 ratio wins to losses for his opponents, does Kattar, while Chikadze it's 1.41, and Kattar is fighting the more experienced competition with an 8.9-5 record, as the average record of a Chikadze opponent is 4.75 wins and 3.38 losses. They both are beating guys with the exact same win-to-loss ratio of 1.46, but it's Kattar who's beating the more experienced opponents. And when we talk about losses, it's Kattar who's losing to guys like Zabit and Max Holloway, while Giga's only loss has come to Austin Springer. So, yeah, the strength of schedule advantage here is definitely in Kattar's favor, but the striking, the strength of schedule, the measurables, and the finish stats are all in favor of Giga here, but Calvin's got a little bit of an experience advantage and a little bit of a strength of schedule advantage. And I would also suggest, Brady, that he's got a conditioning advantage here. We've never seen Giga go 5 rounds. We have seen Giga slow down a lot late in fights. We know that Giga cuts a ton of weight to make 145 pounds. And he did show some improvement in that, especially in the Barbosa fight, getting a 3rd round knockout over Barbosa. And I remember after that 2nd round ended, I had money on Edson. And I said out loud between the 2nd and 3rd rounds, now Edson's going to break him. And boy, was I wrong about that, brother. But that's the improvement. So sometimes, we have to see the improvements before we can believe that they've happened. Otherwise, you're just hoping. And as a great man once said, you can hope in one hand and shit in the other and find out which one fills up first. So we've got to worry about not hoping, but knowing what we do know here. And what we do know is that this fight is likely to take place on the feet for the majority of the time, and that Giga's got more weapons and is better on the feet. But does he have good enough conditioning? Can he finish a guy like Calvin Kattar, who's never been knocked out and never even been knocked down in the UFC? Because we can go back and look at that Zabit fight against Calvin and see how he got stronger in the 3rd round and Zabit started to wilt. And everybody said, man, if that fight went 5 rounds as it should have, because it was a main event, Calvin would have taken over late. Is this going to be the same story in this fight? Are we going to be seeing Calvin Kattar make it to the 4th round here against Giga? And if he does, will Giga wilt? Will Giga be able to show 5-round conditioning, or are we going to see the weight cut be too much for him and him wilting in those championship rounds? So I'm picking Giga Chikadze to win this fight. But if you're going to lay minus 200 or more on Giga, it might behoove you to hedge out of that by putting maybe 0.1 units on Calvin Kattar to win in the 4th round at plus 2,800, and Calvin Kattar to win in round 5 at plus 3,600. That might be a really good way to hedge a Giga bet if you get a little bit nervous that he might wilt in the later rounds here. But this is a great first main event for 2022. Two dynamic strikers with a lot of experience who have fought fantastic competition, and guys that got a lot of heart and a lot of durability, as we've seen. So I can't wait for this one, man. Which way are you leaning on this one? Because I'm going to pick Giga, but I also think that Calvin's going to be live if he makes it to the 4th and 5th rounds here.
Yeah, I'm going to pick Giga as well, but we'll talk about the money line. First, I want to shout out Tajik, the GOAT. I'm a little late to the party. Hope everyone is doing well. Happy New Year and best of luck this year. Shout out to Tajik for the GOAT.
Shout out Tajik.
And I was on Tajik's Twitter Spaces the other day. If you don't follow Tajik yet, go follow him on Twitter. He does these Twitter Spaces. I was listening to it while cooking my chicken. And while cooking my chicken, Tajik asked me to come on, and I was about to come on, but my chicken started burning, so I couldn't get on, Tajik. But maybe next time I can get on there. But yeah, great show there. I believe it was you and Sean. Go check out Tajik there. But yeah, and then the second one, I do want to say rest in peace, Bob Saget. It looks like Bob Saget just passed away like 30 minutes to an hour ago.
Oh wow, man! Yeah. Really? He seems a young man.
He was 65. It's
he's 65. Wow, yeah. Wow. Rest in peace, Bob Saget. That's a shame, man. Yeah. That guy was a comedy legend. I did not hear that. I did. That's rough, man. We've lost some good ones, man. Betty White. Yeah. Recently we've really lost some good ones here at the end of the year. It's a shame.
Yeah, so that sucks. Yeah, rest in peace, Bob Saget. But back to this fight. Yeah, I think you brought up a lot of good points. I think, people might take a look at the stats on Calvin and say, these fights are skewed. Max Holloway just landed over 400 strikes. But what I say to that is, remember a couple days ago, I asked you, what are the stats without the Holloway fight? And it's like the same thing. Like, he's getting outlanded by his opponents, negative significant strike differential. So, I think it's skewed, but I don't think it's like, that skewed. It's definitely telling a story here. The big thing for me is the cardio. You take a look at Giga, and on the Contender Series, he slows down and gasses out in the 3rd round against Austin Springer. He gets submitted. We see against Brandon Davis, he slows down in the 3rd round, loses that 3rd round, but still wins a split decision. Against Jamal Emmers, in a fight that I thought Jamal Emmers won the fight, he slows down a ton in that 3rd round. He gets, he loses the 3rd round pretty handily, gets struck pretty handily by Emmers in that 3rd, loses the 3rd round, but wins a split decision. Against Erwin Rivera, he even slows down a little bit in the 3rd round against Erwin Rivera, but wins the unanimous decision. And this is the fight where, I always have been a big Chikadze hater, but this is the fight where I kind of, toned it back a little bit against Omar Morales. Giga, that was the best I've ever seen him look. And in that 3rd round, like, he went out there, he knocked down Morales, he almost got him out of there, and he looked like the fresher guy compared to him and Morales in that 3rd round. And I think he might have, turned a corner in that fight. But then he goes out there, knocks out Jamie Simmons, knocks out Cub Swanson. So I'm still kind of up in the air in terms of his cardio. How good is his cardio actually? Yes, it looked good in the Morales fight, but that was the only fight it has looked good in. But he goes in against Edson Barbosa. He's, clearly winning the fight, gets into the 3rd round. He hurts Barbosa, really bad. His cardio looks fine, at least early on in the 3rd. So I think he is making improvements. I think, he is working on that weight cut, making it easier. The cardio is looking better. But still, like, we've never seen him in a 4th round, never seen him in a 5th round. If this fight does get into the 4th and 5th rounds, and you got to think that, Kattar's going to have some success in those rounds. But I think, either Chikadze, potentially could finish Kattar early. I personally don't think so, but maybe he can. But I think at the very least, Chikadze can clearly win those first 2 and then sneak that 3rd. But I think that the 4th and 5th rounds can be sketchy, and that's where you do bring up those props for Calvin Kattar. But I like Giga, but I'll be honest, I really hate this money line. Chikadze opened up -175. He's -233. And Calvin Kattar opened up +150, and he's currently +198. I'll tell you, if this fight was 3 rounds, yeah, I have no problem laying -233 on Chikadze. If it's 3 rounds, I'm fine with that. But, since this is 5 rounds, those last 2 rounds scare the crap out of me, and I have to pay -233 for Chikadze to answer, questions we've never, seen him go in the 4th and 5th round, right? So the money line scares me. I will pick him, but I just can't lay that price tag on him. But in terms of the over-under set at 2.5. The over is -170. It actually opened up at -125. So now -170, under 2.5 is +140. And I actually really like that over. You take a look at Calvin Kattar. This guy is durability is next level.
Yeah.
Maybe Giga can put him out for the first time, but he has absorbed 992 significant strikes, about 1,000 strikes, and he's never even been knocked down. Like, this guy, his chin is next level. And on the flip side, Chikadze, his chin's really good in his own right. So, I think this fight goes over. I think instead of betting aside, for me, I'm going to be looking at the over bets. But if I was like forced to bet a money line, it'd have to be Kattar at that price tag. But I think I'm going to stay away from it in terms of, betting aside. I like those overs, though. Any thoughts on the over-unders? Any thoughts on the fight goes, fight doesn't go? And any thoughts on the money line? Are you with me? Do you think the line is a tad wide here, or do you think it's about right, or it could be wider?
I think it's a tad wide because let's say, all right, so we just saw Edson Barboza about a minus 130, minus 140 favorite over Giga in the last fight. Am I right about that? Was it around there? Because we both had bets on Barboza, right?
Yeah, I think it closed around like minus 125, minus 130 around there.
Okay, so yeah, Barboza was a slight favorite. And then now you got a guy like Calvin Kattar, who I think if he were to square off against Barboza, you'd say that, it's probably a coin flip, right? I mean, that's how I would look at it pre-flop, is just be like, okay, I haven't watched any tape, but I think that Kattar and Barboza would be a great matchup. And I say flip a coin, right? Well, now you got Calvin Kattar stepping in, who's a lot like Edson Barboza, more one-dimensional with the hands than Barboza, who throws a lot more kicks. But and then now you see him and he's plus 170, and you're like, boy, people were ready to short Giga against Barboza. And we both said the same thing too in that fight. We were like, if this is a 3-round fight, we'd be on Giga.
Yeah.
But we said it's a 5-round fight, and Barboza's been there before. Giga hasn't. And like I said, I was saying there after the second round, now this is where Edson's going to break him. And I was wrong. So, yeah, I mean, I think Giga should be the favorite here. But there have been so many people, you included, me included, who have been dragged kicking and screaming into this scenario, shorting Giga along the way, saying, but he got submitted by Austin Springer. Well, but, I like him against Irvin Rivera. But he got submitted against Springer. I kind of like him against Morales, but he got submitted against Springer. It's kind of like when you say Talia Santos lost a decision to Mara Romero Barella, and then you miss all the bets after that. I kind of feel like that with Giga. Like, people have been shorting him all the way here, and now he's here in another main event with a really durable guy. It's going to go 5 rounds, people think, and people are saying, including me, this could get really hairy for Giga after the 3rd round or even after the 2nd round. So, yeah, the line seems wide. I'm not laying minus 200 on Giga here, but I'm certainly not running to the window at this point for Kattar either, because I think he's at a skill deficiency, and I don't think he's a good enough wrestler or grappler in order to win enough minutes on the ground that I could see him winning this fight, at more than a 40% clip or so.
Yeah, I think you brought up a good point. Like, I think this is a mistake a lot of people make. Like, fighters, they can improve. They can improve, right? So I feel like people kind of get trapped at times going back and watching a fight from 2-3 years ago and saying, oh, this guy's gas tank looked bad. His takedown even looked horrible. Fighters can fix that in 3-4 years at a good camp. And, Giga's at King's MMA, a really good camp. So, he can improve. And I think he has, Weezy.
Yeah, he certainly has, man. I've been wrong about Giga so many times, and but the guy keeps winning convincingly. I mean, he has had some bad 3rd rounds, but up until that point, he's winning fights convincingly. And and I see that Kattar is probably just about one-dimensional enough that Giga is going to be outclass him on the feet, and that's how it should happen. But if I were betting on Giga, I would definitely hedge with a 4th and 5th round sprinkle, where you could get 2.8 units back on a 1.1 unit bet on Kattar in the 4th, and you can get 3.6 units back on a 0.1 unit bet for Kattar to win in the 5th. So it might be a good way to hedge a minus 200 Giga money line bet if you really do think that he's going to win this fight 75-80% of the time.
Yeah, I'm not gonna bet Chikadze at minus 230. Like, if I bet Giga at this price tag and the fight did go into the 4th and 5th round, I'd be a little terrified there. But I will pick him to win. I think the line's wide, but Giga, I think it's a good matchup for him. It really is. It's just the cardio is still a little bit iffy for me, but I do think he has improved that. So I think he'll have at least 3 rounds of gas. So instead of just 2 like he did in the past. So give me Chikadze as well, but I'm really liking that over 2.5 rounds. But that's about it for this fight. Any other props that stuck out to you in the main event? We talked about the rounds 4 and 5 props for Kattar. Those are juicy. Kattar by KO plus 400, Chikadze by KO plus 110. Are you interested in potentially maybe like a Chikadze by decision plus 250? That's not great enough. Kattar by decision plus 400. Are you interested in the fight goes or fight doesn't go? Any of those?
Not really, dude. I like your bet, the over 2.5 or the fight starts round 3. I think those are good bets simply because, when you look at the 7 combined losses for Chikadze and Kattar, there have been 2 that have been finished inside the distance, and they were both by submission. And in these guys, 36 combined pro wins, only 3 of them have come by submission. So these guys, they submit their opponents less than 10% of the time in a huge sample size, and neither one of these guys has ever been knocked out. So, a knockout happening in the first 2 rounds would be, what the statisticians would call an unpredictable event, because, well, not completely unpredictable, but unlikely, simply because, these guys are both very durable and their path to victory is via knockout. But, when your path to victory is via knockout and you're facing somebody that's never been knocked out, something's got to break. Either somebody's going to get knocked out or that fight doesn't go to decision, bet's going to break. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it's not like Kattar only has like 12, 13 fights. Like Kattar has 27 fights and he's never been knocked out. If Giga could knock him out, like I would be very, very impressed because, like you say, you need a shovel to knock out Calvin Kattar. You really like this guy's chin. He showed in the Max Holloway fight. I know that people are going to say Max Holloway doesn't have power, all that, but he showed it in the Max Holloway fight. Like his chin is next level.
Next level, dude. The guy's stupid tough, and you can never question his heart. So, the way to knock out a person like that is with the liver kick or something to the body where the organs shut down, or like when Shane Burgos got knocked out by Barbosa, where it damn near looked like he had a stroke in there because he got hit. And then, and it happened later. Like the body said, your brain is telling me to stand up, but I'm telling you now we're going down because we can't do this anymore. So, yeah, I think that if Giga does knock out Kattar, it's going to be with that liver kick because his body's just going to shut down. And, that's the only way you're going to get Kattar out of there, I think. Or if you sub him, because everybody needs to breathe. So other than that, though, that over 2.5 does seem like a pretty good bet to me.
Yeah, I like that. Boob saying pencil dick Giga getting highly overrated.
Yikes. No, not highly overrated, man. You don't overrate guys that are knocking out Edson Barbosa.
Yeah, I mean, coming from the biggest Chikadze hater out there, which I am, I think he's earned my respect 100%. I think he's improved. I think he's on a good run. And if he can beat Kattar, especially if he can knock out Kattar, that'll really sell me. And I'm curious to see if he does beat Kattar, what's next for Chikadze? Like who's he going to go against next? I think I'm really excited to see who goes after Kattar if he does win.
Yeah, it's such a good one, because you can't deny Chikadze. I mean, you can't just keep feeding him guys because he'll eventually go through the whole division if he keeps up at his pace. So eventually he's going to get Holloway or Volk or Ortega. I think Ortega would murder him, though. I think the first second that Ortega snatched onto a submission, he'd have Giga out of there. Ortega's the kind of guy who only needs to win 3 seconds of a fight to get you out of there. So, but yeah, this is a great main event, man. And I think we're going to get to see Giga's and Calvin's stand-up skills shine. I don't think either of these guys is going to wrestle offensively. So we're going to get to see a striker versus striker matchup where all their skills are on display for us to watch and enjoy. And we can start off 2022 easing into another year of UFC, not getting neck deep in this pool, just starting the year off slow, lathering up, you guys. It's a long 2022. Let's ease into it.
Yeah, I don't want to start the year betting on a -170 Katlyn Chookagian. I don't want to start the year betting on Juarez or Vanessa Demopoulos. I want to, take it slow. There are some spots that stick out. This is going to be a very light card for me. Like we talked through the whole card, Weezy, and a lot of these fights, you can make a case for the underdog. I mean, pretty much every single one, right?
Everyone, I really believe that. Pickett, Algeo, Collier, Bontorin, Maia, Kattar, even Juarez and Kelleher is a veteran. Yeah, dude, you can make a case for all of them. These money lines feel like a bunch of landmines. The over unders. You know what the one over under bet that's actually sticking out to me, and there's no value in it. It's Chookagian Maia going to decision. That's like the only thing that feels safe, and I got to lay like minus 300 on that bet. So, it was really nice coming back and talking the fights here. But like I say, Vegas has got to make a line for every fight. We don't have to bet every fight, though.
No, 100%. And I, like I said, I'm definitely taking it light this card. Next card looks a lot better, 270 for betting. But this is a card where I think, a lot of people could potentially be burned if they do go too heavy, on a spot or multiple spots. So Tajik saying Pickett versus Holmes over 1.5 is interesting. Yeah, I noticed that same thing. It's like minus 185 for the over 1.5. That also did stick out to me. But yeah, I think we did it, Weezy. It was nice to I don't think there was much rust. I think the show went well, right?
Yeah, we're old professionals at this point, man, but still it's a little bit daunting when you haven't done something for a while to get in there and do it again. But being able to interact with the fantastic group of people we have here in the chat, all the MMA diehards out here on a Sunday night listening to us break down 11 fights. I'm not the greatest card of the year, but I think not the greatest betting card of the year, but I think there's going to be some great fights, man. I'm really looking forward to watching them.
Yeah, I think it's one of those cards where on paper you're like, this card's not great. A lot of people are. I already see a lot of people crapping on the card, but I think it's one of those cards that are going to definitely deliver. And on top of that, we just spent 4 weeks without any fights. Like, I'll take anything. I'll take the 12 Demopoulos Juarez fights, right? No, just kidding. I would not take that. But just give me some fights.
6 right? Demopoulos Juarez, 6 Sherman against Collier, and we'll still take it. We'll watch. And then I'll have my guys reach out to Sherman and Collier for my Buddy Cop show, because it turned out that John Vellante turned me down for that Netflix idea. I don't know what the next step in John Vellante's career is going to be, but John Vellante, you're making a huge mistake turning down Huggy Bear and Fat John. That would have been the Netflix hit of the year. You made a huge mistake. Get your agent to call me back. We can do this, baby.
That was probably one of my favorite moments on Stat Diggers in 2021 was, instead of breaking down the Huggy Bear Vellante fight, you didn't break it down at all. You didn't say one thing about the matchup. You spent 10 minutes talking about a Netflix idea. You can't get that anywhere else.
No, you can't. You can't, man. It's the kind of stuff that you really only get on Stat Diggers right here on Pub Sports Radio. Some of the best MMA content you're going to find out there on YouTube.
Yep. So yeah, we did it, Weezy. Let the people know where they can find you. I know you're a busy guy. You're going to be getting back into the content game. I bet it feels good. So where can they find you? What do you have going on for the first card of the year?
Yeah. So you can check me out on my YouTube channel, Uncle Weezy. I'm going to be doing balls deep breakdowns of fights all week. I'll be doing a full card breakdown on Tuesday night called Just the Tip. That'll be at 10 o'clock Central Time, where I will break down all 11 of these fights from a statistical perspective. Finish off with Uncle Weezy's ass shaving of the week. And let me tell you something, man, this is a hard week to find an ass shaving. I'm going to have to kind of really put in the work here, but I'll be doing balls deep breakdowns, hopefully every night. Even I might do one late night tonight, because it's been so long since I've been able to even produce a video on my channel for you guys. It's been like a month. So I'd like to do maybe 4 straight nights of balls deep breakdowns. I'm thinking about starting with Benítez Brown tonight. But you can check me out on Pub Sports Radio every Sunday for Stat Diggers, and every Wednesday going forward with you, Sparring with Reality Betting. And our guy Monk is going to be joining us for the DFS show on Wednesday nights now at 6 o'clock Central Time. So, yeah, my channel. Check me out on Twitter at MMA Weezy. And like I say, I'll be producing a bunch of content this week. I'm looking forward to getting back into the UFC here in 2022 and making it the best year ever.
I'm excited. I'm very excited for a very fun year. You can follow me on Twitter, DFS_numbers. Instagram is DFS by the numbers. Me and Weezy will be going live on my channel, DFS by the numbers on YouTube tomorrow 5:15 p.m. Eastern time for the main event deep dive. Like Weezy said, we'll be back on Pub Sports Radio Wednesday. Me, Luke, Monk, and Weezy doing the DraftKings. I will be going live on my channel on Friday after the weigh-ins as always, and then we'll be doing our best bet show and the debut of Eric Bets Fights is in the chat here. He'll be making his debut on Best Bet on Saturday. Cannot wait. Eric Bets Fights. He's not only a very sharp guy, but a very nice guy, so that should be fun as well. Weezy, you're laughing. What, did I miss something in the chat?
that comment you just said that Demopoulos and Juarez were going to fight Chase Sherman. That's gold.
What? I didn't even.
That's gold. You got to read that comment. That's awesome, man.
And
then the headliner is both Demopoulos and Gomez Juarez versus Chase Sherman. I'd pay for that fight.
I think
that would be
Sherman might lose.
Awesome. Chase Sherman with that 83% takedown defense, trying to fight 2 female strawweights. Who doesn't want to pay for that one, man? That's pay-per-view.
I mean, I'd pay to see it. I wouldn't pay much, but I'd pay a little bit.
But I'd pay.
I'd pay something, maybe a couple bucks. But yeah, guys, that's about it. I will be posting my full card breakdown prediction video probably tomorrow. Just got to record it with all the analysis is already done, all that good stuff. Leave a like, subscribe, Pub Sports. Check out Weezy. Check out me. And we'll see you back very soon. Thank you all for hanging out. It was a very good first show of the year, and we'll talk to you soon. Good luck at